we can see. Happy birthday to you. We wish you the very best. Yeah, hopefully the legislature during lunch they can arrange a small cake, even those cupcakes, Oh, the one that controls the pairs. Yeah, they can make something. They can arrange something. Thank you so much. All right. No, thank you so much for that, Honorable Dex. Then we can go to, our agenda is, because I think we need to adopt it. It's a standard agenda that I think we are going to have the presentation on the annual report 24-25. And then we'll have the second presentation on the Q2 financial and non-financial for this financial year, as well as the mid-year budget performance, as well as the draft budget and the draft APP for Provincial Treasury for 26-27 financial year. We'll then have discussions, then go straight to the minutes, adopt those minutes and close the meeting. So we'll request that colleagues take notes as the presentation are being made, so that we'll have just one combined discussion when we get into the discussion item. So those will be the 4 presentations that we are going to take this morning from the Provincial Treasury. And of course, the document, they were sent last week. Some of them were sent on Monday. So we have had enough time to have a look at the documents that we are going to be discussing or being presented to us here today. Can we adopt this agenda for today, honorable members? Honorable CQ? Yes. You move. Yes. Honorable Brotherson?
I second, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It has been seconded. Then thank you so much. We'll then go straight to item number 4, which is the annual report 24-25. SOT and your team.
Good morning, Honourable Chair. Good morning to the honourable members of the committee. Please do forgive us. We have a slightly different agenda.
Thank you so much. It has been seconded.
We're not aware that we need to present the APP. We do have the draft budget, though. So, Chair, if you'll just bear with us on that. Chair, just in terms of just overall comments, the team are here and will be undertaking the presentation. The Provincial Treasury, as you would have seen in the annual report that was tabled, it performed particularly well last year. We also received, again, an unqualified audit opinion, and the team will take you through those presentations. In terms of the department, in terms of the quarterly report that we'll be presenting, we've spent 43.8% at mid-year. It is slightly behind in terms of the 50% average that you would see. And again, some of this majority has been around the savings in COE, but we have progressed very well in filling the vacancies. We've moved from a 12.6% vacancy to a 7.25% vacancy. So we're working on about 38 posts at the moment. So we've done really well there. But what we have done is we've redirected all the savings to the Provincial Financial Recovery Plan, as well as the centralisation of internal audit that Cabinet approved, where health, education and transport falls under internal audit. And obviously we needed to then provide resources to undertake audits in those 3 departments. So fortunately we had those savings and we didn't have to draw on the contingency reserve. As well as on the transversal costs, you will see that we've seen a significant escalation in the bank charges for the province. And that is because we've moved towards using the card machines, and that's had quite a significant financial impact, as well as the mainframe costs that we carry for the province, in particular with the rollout of Logos in the Department of Health. So it's actually been fortuitous that we've had those savings and we've been able to allocate them accordingly, and that'll obviously be reflected when we do the adjustment. From the performance of the department itself, mid-year, we've achieved 96% of our targets, so we're doing very well. We've progressed exceptionally well in a number of areas. We've also overachieved some of the targets. And also, obviously, the team are focusing on driving the financial recovery plan. But we've had really positive progress on female representation at management level, as well as absorbing and appointing more than 30% of our interns were persons with disability to create that, that pipeline of young people that could then be absorbed into the department. When we get to the provincial representation and presentations, you will see there that both from the public entities and departments, we're on track in terms of revenue collection. But unfortunately, with the spend provincially, we're looking at, again, a projected overspend of 7.5 billion rand, in the main health and education be the key drivers. The other departments that show overspend are really aligned to their requests for rollovers, for example, Office of the Premier in terms of the Youth Fund. There has been slow spend with the public entities, only sitting at about 44% at this point in time. And obviously that's an area that needs further engagement. We are having our MINCOM bud this evening, where we're going to be discussing the adjustment estimates in terms of additional allocations and allocating the contingency reserve. So we will hopefully be getting the confirmation of the date from the Legislature as to when we'll be tabling those adjustment estimates. And also just then in terms of the financial recovery plan, we are progressing and the Premier will be officially launching the recovery plan in next Wednesday. So I think at that point, I'll then hand over to Sis Ida, who will take us through the first part of the annual report. Chair will also be guided as to the detail that you would like to see, because these are quite extensive presentations that we have, including those that touch on the departments and the entities. And then Kacheni will touch on the financial aspects of the annual report. Thank you.
No, thank you so much, Shokti. Before, I think someone from your team dropped the ball, because the agenda that we sent you was quite clear that the presentation of the draft APP would be done today. So it's someone from your team that would have then dropped the ball. Okay, thank you so much. You can proceed.
Good morning, Honorable Chairperson and Honorable Members. I will be taking you through the annual report for the department. If you may then allow me to probably skip the first slide, that is just giving you a strategic overview of the department, which in the main is talking to our vision and mission, as well as our outcomes, which is the next slide, as it were. On the next slide, we are still reporting chairperson and members on 5 programs that we have in the department, which is Program 1 to Program 5. And in terms of our performance for the 24-25 financial year, we have achieved an overall percentage of 95%. And I must indicate, Chairperson, that that particular achievement is actually against a total of 36 indicators that were fully achieved, as well as 2 that were partially achieved. We are also indicating to members of this particular committee that even though we are indicating an achievement of 95% for the 24-25 financial year, in the department we had a total of 14 targets that we have exceeded, as it were. And we are also indicating on the next slide programs that have contributed towards those targets being actually exceeded. Like the HOD has indicated, Chairperson, we're going to be guided by you in terms of whether you would want us to go to the detail, but I will indicate on the next slide that we are now giving an overall achievement per program. And there is a program that did not fully achieve its target is Program 1. And that was on 2 targets, which is a target on the payment of suppliers within 30 days, as well as the target on the employment of persons with disabilities. Other than that, all of our targets were achieved and they were actually exceeded. We are also then on the next slide just showing members tracking performance over the quarters that we had already, which we had already reported in this particular house, which then culminated in the overall performance of 95% that we are now reporting to members. The next slides, Chairperson, are then giving us the detail in terms of programs and where we have not achieved targets, which in the main is just only one program, like I have indicated. I'm not sure, Chairperson, whether to take you through everything, but I will then be guided by you. But that is in the main how the department had performed in terms of its performance targets. But then on the same annual report, we are also reporting on governance issues, which relates to how the department has actually conducted itself in terms of assessing their risks and managing those particular risks, as it were, which is further down than on a column that indicates governance. Then we're also reporting on the number of meetings that we have held with our oversight structures and issues that we had to deal with and how we have then performed around those particular issues, which is part then of our governance. It also includes the SCOPA resolutions that were actually, made for the department to execute, which in the main were two, as it were. So basically, Chairperson, the annual report of the department also then covers what the HOD has already spoken about, which is the management of human resources for the department, in the main highlighting how we are tracking our vacancies as the department and where we are now, which then indicates that as at the end of the financial year, which was the 31st of March, we had a 20.6% vacancy rate, which was calculated against the 108 posts that we have. But this, like the HOD has indicated, it has been drastically decreased. As we speak today, we are sitting at a vacancy rate of 8%. And we're also reporting on the same information around then the issues of persons with disabilities on our human resources. And we're also indicating what strategies have we then implemented to manage our people to ensure that they are then fully and effectively utilized as this particular department. Chairperson, if I am then allowed to provide that overall presentation for the department, I would then pause here and allow the CFO then to take members through the financial information, if that is okay with members and Chairperson.
Morning, Chair, members, and Shoti and colleagues. I will take you through the financial section of the annual report. I will basically highlight the areas of which are more like the key accounts or the important notes that were disclosed in the financial information that was submitted to AG.
Yeah, if you can, so that we can indicate in the slide, because after you have the HR.
The first slide is slide 44.
44, okay.
Yeah, I'm just checking on the screen. I'm not sure whoever is controlling the screen will be moving with me, but I'll be calling the slide numbers. I'm on slide 44, which talks to the irregular expenditure. Chair, we're glad to report that on the 24-25 financial year, the department did not have any irregular expenditure that went with the financials to AG. If we move to the next slide talks to fruitless and wasteful expenditure. The only fruitless expenditure that we had, it was also written off during the year, but I'll explain how it emanated. The members will remember when we report on the quarterly performances that we have issues with SARS whenever we have to do tax calculations, especially for the employees who have left the department, where we need to do corrections. Then SARS will raise these penalties because once you revise the RP5 submitted, they take it as a late submission. Then they'll raise these penalties, and we are currently addressing that matter with SARS. So that 27,000 that you see there, that was reported, also written off in the same year, was relating to those RP5 that had to be revised. If we move further to information on late or non-payment, those are the invoices that UCSI just reported on them, they're just amounts. But if I may report how AG measures a department, they don't necessarily measure the department on a single invoice that was paid late. They work on the aggregate of invoices and the payment cycle to creditors. So if I remember correctly, after they calculated for the whole year all invoices that we've paid, vis-a-vis those that were paid late, our payment turnaround time, creditors' payment cycle is below 21 days for the year 24-25. And we've maintained that payment cycle for some time. Even those invoices that you'll find that they are late, probably they'll be late by a week or so. We never have invoices that are very long outstanding. Normally, it would be an issue where probably somebody just went on leave forgetting to submit their invoice to finance before they go on leave. So such instances happen, but we are trying to manage it and control the occurrence of that to zero. If we move to the next slide, now we're going to the actual performance financial information. If you go to slide 49, slide 49 is an extract of appropriation statement. Appropriation statement merely indicates the utilization of the budget that was allocated to department, mainly by programs. As indicated there, you will see that the performance of the department on overall was 96%, as the HOD indicated, and the department underspent by an amount of 26 million rand. And of that 26 million rand, we requested some of the money to be suspended to the current financial year. If we move further down, then on slide 50, we're presenting similar information in economic classification terms. If you look by items, you'll see that the bulk of the underspending was coming on two economic classification categories, 9.8 million coming from compensation of employees and 13.4 coming from goods and services. And then the third lowest is payment for capital asset with 2.5 million. It goes back to the same percentage of 96% of the budget that was adjusted of 660 million expenditure. Then what is next, Chair? On the slide 51, we submit a financial statement with the explanation of all those variances to say, as I indicated, that as you see on the appropriation statement listed by programs, we also have to give information to say those underspending, where they emanated from. As it is indicated, bulk of it came from COE under Program 1, and the remainder came from goods and services of about 6 million. Then there's 498,000 of it came from transfers and subsidies, and 1.5 from payment for capital asset. If we move to the next slide, Program 2, the underspending of 1.8 mainly came from compensation of employees, and 1.5 came from compensation of employees, and 227 came from goods and services. Further down on Program 3, 1.3 of the variance came from COE and Goods and services also underspent by 6.2 million. If we move to Program 4 underspent by about 5 million and 4.6 came from COE, compensation of employees. You will recall that in the previous financial year, we reported that internal audit Program 4 revised the structure. They had lots of vacancies that they were busy filling. Hence, we see a huge amount of underspending coming from COE. And they had two systems that were in the process of being procured, Teammate and Cura. Teammate is a process. It's a system that they use to do the audits, and the Cura is a system that they use to do the risk management. So we are currently replacing those two systems. So we don't know what will be the new systems that will be getting, but the contract with those two companies has come to an end or will be coming to an end, so we have to replace them. Then Program 5 spent almost all of its budget. Then if we explain by economic classifications on slide 56, mainly the explanation on COE is that we have vacancies that HR is still busy with filling. Then the 13 million underspent on goods and services, mainly it's the items where it came from is indicated. Admin fees, advertising, computer services, consultants, which are commonly known agents and support services, as well as S&Ts. Mainly S&Ts, we are revising almost across the department in that item, because since the start of the virtual meetings, we're seeing across the department, most of the units that were traveling before is starting to save on that item. So we have to revise the budget allocated for S&Ts down and reallocate it to other important items where we see pressures. Then we'll have interest and rent on land. We only paid SARS on interest, as I explained earlier on. Then transfers and subsidies, we underspent by 528,000. Here we pay for car licenses, bursaries, and all such expenditure, like also like staff exit when people goes on retirement, where we have to cash their leaves, gratuities. Payment for capital asset was underspent by 2.5, as I said earlier. This is due to the orders that were out there with suppliers not delivered at year end for things like laptops, desktops, office equipment. If I remember correctly, we also ordered a vehicle for people living with disabilities that have a ramp that lift those colleagues who uses wheelchairs. So it was also not delivered as at year end. That 2.5 million, it combines all those items. On the revenue side, we also collect revenue, but our revenue self-collects because it's interest across all PMG accounts in the province. We also reported on it. We submitted to AG. I won't read it to the members as it is indicated item by item from the biggest item to the smallest, but maybe what is worth mentioning is that the area that is the biggest where we collect the interest, the revenue is just the interest on bank accounts at our PMG or our local bank that we bank with in the province, as well as at the IGCC account at the Reserve Bank. If we move down to the next slide 60, it's still the explanation that indicates under compensation of employees, we underspent by 2.6 million. It also gives the comparative information in the previous financial year for 23-24. The members will recall we were reporting 24-25. Also, for purpose of reporting, AG wants us to give the comparative information. So I won't waste the time of the members and read that slide number 60. It was just comparative information. Then if we go to the next slide, we also have people or individuals or entities that owe the department where we collect money, receivables, commonly known as debtors. You'll see a claim receivables. We also broke it down to say how much of those claims receivables were current, how much of them are non-current. You'll see the totals. The current are those that will be collected within the period of 12 months from the date of 31 March was 11.7. And the non-current, if we amortize them, that were going to be collected beyond the period of 12 months, we're making up 1.4 million. In total, we had receivables of 13.2. If you look at the sentence on top, you will see that if we compare the two, our receivables went up. In the previous financial year, we had 7.2, and the year of reporting 24-25 was 13.2. Slide 62 still gives a breakdown now in terms of the entities that owes that department. It's national department, it was 0. Then provincial departments, we had departments that were owing the department about 10 million under current, then 170,000 beyond 12 months, which is non-current. Private entities was 738,000 within current, nothing under non-current. If you look at the totals, it's 11.2 and 1.7. The tax debts was only 16,000. If we move to the next slide, Chair, staff debts, out of all the debts that we have, part of them were the staff. Bursary debts, there are those officials that will be granted the bursaries. The bursaries are granted to employees with terms and conditions that they complete their studies. They don't fail. If they fail, they have to make sure that they pay for those subjects themselves until they pass them and complete the qualification. If not, then the department will have to recover the money that was used to support those employees. So mainly bursary debts are those who have defaulted. If we move to the next slide, other debtors, you'll see bursary debts, overpaid salaries, learnerships, or other debtors. These are people, I think, that are outside of the department that we are collecting from them. They are totaling to 984,000. And the aging is indicated there that it's about 3 years, average of 3 years for all of them. If we move to the next slide, we're also indicating what prepayments we disclose on the financials. You'll see that in the 24-25 financial year is 10.7, previous financial year was 0. This was due to the change in the modified cash standards of reporting, that where we pay for the licenses early in the financial year, or we have to amortize it and indicate, because we have to show them for the period of over 12 months of usage. So it was just a change. That's why there is no comparative information in the previous financial year. Then the prepayment expense, it was 0, but in this current financial year, we will indicate some, because there is that requirement on point number 13 that require us now to report the prepayments. Particularly, it talks to the software licenses, because we pay early, then use the licenses. But for the period that we haven't used for them, say we pay in January, we'll use licenses up until December. Those what you call payment that cover the future months are regarded as prepayments. Hence, I'm saying this was a change and it's a new reporting requirement. If we move to slide 67, payables, we had payables of 316,000, broken down as indicated, and the explanations are given on the side. If you look at the comparative information, they dropped by about 100,000. In the previous financial year, 23-24, we had 416. 24-25 was 316. Next one is contingent liabilities. These, Chair, are court cases that were ongoing at the end of the financial year. That's our legal section and various attorneys that are appointed by the department, including state attorney, are currently following up. You will see that the first one, it was removed, but we still have to report it provided details as indicated because it was removed during 24-25. The second one, the SMEC case, which is number 2, the anticipated contingent liabilities, 350,000, that case was still ongoing. If we go to the next one, the ZM Tibane was also removed during or finalized during the year 24-25, and we're providing a brief explanation of what happened to that case, as well as OS Holding versus MSC for Cocktire and 4 others. It was also concluded during 24-25. We also had to report to AG to say this is a discussion of how the case was finalized. The next one is Sizani Zulu Transport and others versus MEC for transport. It was still ongoing. We reported that in worst case scenario, the anticipated department will pay 360,000 towards that matter. It was ongoing during at the end of the year, 31 March 2025. Then the last one is pending. One for Afrisan Trading as Sibaya Casino. We reported this one on the performance reports quarterly to the committee. It relates to the dispute that was lodged by Sibaya Casino on the taxing on some of the gamings that they conduct within their casinos, that they strongly believe they are not taxable, and the province revenue fund tax them, because Western Cape have a similar case that is ongoing. So our legal services and our attorneys decided to put this matter on hold and wait for the Western Cape matter and see which direction it goes. Then we'll take it from there once we know what is the conclusion of that matter. Say the Western Cape lose, the revenue fund will have to fork out 81 million. That was a claim by Isibaya Casino. My feature is that if other casinos in the province also have similar claims, we see the probability of those casinos joining and making similar claims because their sister casino will have won. So we just hope that this thing does not materialize because it might spell a disaster. I'm not sure whether these types of gaming happen at BlackRock, they happen at Suncoast, they happen at all these casinos that we have in the province, but we just pray it doesn't materialize. That is the biggest one that I'm scared of. The next one is Accelerate matter. 2.5 million was a contingent assessment.
Sorry, the Sizanani Mazul is with regard to scholar transport. What is this issue in relation to?
I'm not sure about the actual details. I'm not
Subsidy. Regarding the bus subsidy.
Bus subsidies.
Oh, it relates to the subsidies, not the scholar transport. Okay.
Chair, most of these cases, they come via the bid appeal tribunal because it resides at Treasury, then Treasury gets cited. And some of the information we might not fully have it from the departments themselves. Then the next one is Accelerate. This matter is also ongoing at West. We anticipate 2.5 million, but we are very optimistic on this one that we will win according to legal services. Gold Cycle Property Limited versus KZN Gaming. Also on this one, it was ongoing at the end of the year. 2.8 million rand is the estimated contingent liability. The next one is Nehau, representing one of our employees. It's 242,000 contingent liability. Then the Tovest matter, also it was ongoing as at the end of March 2025. The estimated contingent liability is 2.2 million. The BPG mass appraisals, it was finalized at the end of the year. The MEC for Treasury and versus Mr. Goldings, the former HOD Etia, is 26 million rand. That matter is still ongoing at court. That was a not CJ's matter, the members will recall it. ND Jacobs is our employee versus Treasury. It's a 3 million. That matter was ongoing. The total of the contingents was, as indicated, 30 million. I'm not sure if the 30 million is accurate since we have 81. I think it was an error that was corrected. Chair. Then if we move further down, here we indicating the irregular expenditure, 24-25. It was removed during the year. If we move to the next slide, the interest, I did speak to it, that we pay to SARS. Then the capital commitments were about 533,000 coming from 120 in the previous financial year. We also had to disclose a note on the financials that talks to it. The current commitments we no longer required to disclose. These disclosure requirements, they change every year, Chair. So we are guided by MCS standard as they are published. Then the operating leases, we disclose those that are less than 1 year, which is 19.3, 1 year to 5 years, 8.5, totaling to 27.9. In the main, those are buildings and the package that we are renting. Treasury rents, the Treasury House, the Nomalanga building where internal audit is residing. Portion of last year, we had Marine building, and the Marine building was closed down when MEC Rogers came into the office. And we also have I think, one parking area that we are renting where our staff park their cars during the day. The next one is finance leases, machinery and equipment. Mainly, we're talking to photocopying machines and I think cell phones, tablets, and the likes. We indicate that 5 million of that was a commitment of less than 1 year, and 5.5 is between 1 year to 5 year, totaling to 10.6. Accruals, our accruals, Chair, almost all of them, none of our accruals were older than 60 days. Out of the accruals that I say they were not older than 60 days, you will find that about 80% of it were within 30 days. So we don't have a long list of accruals. The very current, if you go into the analysis of it, we pay all our suppliers, as I've indicated timelessly. Where we are late, sometimes late by a week or two, but we very rare where we have instances where we are late with paying with suppliers. Key management personnel, we also required to break down the salaries or the compensation that is paid to the key management personnel. Key management personnel are those that are from level 14 upwards. As indicated, the total was 17 for the year. We spent about 17.1 million rand to all key management personnel, including the 2 MECs that we had in the financial year. The members will recall, first 4 months was MEC Nkonyeni, then the remainder was MEC Rogers. Major capital asset expenditure, we also have to make a note for it. We're indicating that we had 9.6 for 24-25, and we're coming from 14.1 in the previous financial year. We gave a detailed breakdown to AG and working papers, including the asset register. They are able to verify this information. Minor asset registers, we classify asset expenditure. We classify our assets. It's a funny way of classification. We're using amounts. The threshold that we use is 5,000 rand. Anything that we bought below 5,000 rand is classified as a minor asset. What cost above 5,000 rand is classified as a major asset. As inflation goes up, you'll find that some asset was once classified as current, now it's classified as a major asset. I always speak to the PAG about that probably it's high time that this amount needs to be revisited. But we will be following on that because we've been using the determination of 5,000 rand ever since I came to government. Came to government in 2002. So I think probably it's something that needs to be revisited up. Intangibles are mainly software licenses that we pay, but here we were talking to the work in progress, the system that Treasury was developing for the e-procurement, the old system. We have a work in progress of 23.1 that is sitting in our books. My understanding is that HOD, once the discussion has been concluded, we will write it off because seemingly we might go with National Treasury system. National Treasury has since came up with some systems that seems to be integrated to other financial systems that we are using. So this e-procurement, this is the old procurement system that we developing during the time of MEC in Akronia, and there was investigation on it, and it was put on hold because National Treasury was unhappy about some of the things that were done. But in the main, it was getting the permission to proceed with doing it because they have to do the assessment to say we're not developing the solutions that they are coming up with, etc. So it's not the recent one that the department has been talking about. It's been sitting in our books for years. So I think it will be high time that probably in the next financial year we take a decision on it to say which direction you're going. Because at one stage, National Treasury wanted to use some of the modules of it to incorporate it to the IFMS. Then it was put on hold because they indicated that. I remember that DG at National was DOND or DG DOND at the time. And the IFMS has been coming alive and disappear, coming up and disappear. To date, I don't know where it is. It's been over 20 years IFMS has been coming to the department. The last one, Chair, is at times we are required to indicate any events after reporting date. We were here talking about the VAT issue. The members will remember the issue of VAT. We had to write a paragraph to AG. But one thing probably that I must emphasize, as much as we've been audited and the audit came, when we submit the financials, we will prepare the financials from the system, extract the TP, prepare all this financial information. That then we'll also prepare the working papers detailing each and every account, account by account, for the AG to be able to analyze it. We submitted about 4 working paper files to AG that detail every information that is disclosed on the financials for them to make sure that they are able to read and interpret the financial statement as they want. It's always our belief that we submit complete, accurate information to AG. In that way, it eliminates questions because all answers are given to the auditors up front. Thank you very much, Chair.
Okay, no, thank you so much for the presentation. We have requested that members note the questions or any comments they might have. I'll therefore request the HOD that we then proceed to the second presentation, which is the second quarter financial and non-financial for 25-26. And then it will be followed by the mid-year budget performance. And then it will be the draft budget, as it were.
Thank you, Chair. I'm coming back on the podium. This is end of September. On slide 1, we're showing the dashboard. If we can move to slide 1. The department was allocated 730 million rand, and as at the end of September, it spent 319 million rand, which represent 43.8. The second bar of the dashboard, we are indicating the historical information that relates to the spending, the history of spending. by department. And we also indicate on the third part the projected spending as at the end of September. That 5.3, Chair, we were called by Premier's office, by the DG, to say every department must contribute something towards the Department of Health. So that 5.3 million that we indicate there, that we project to underspend with, is the money that will be taken at adjustment as our contribution to the Department of Health, so that they can be able to appoint the medical staff. Then below, we're showing on the bar charts, blue and browns, we're indicating the programs, 5 programs across the departments, and the brown being the projected and the blue being the actual expenditure. If you see the blue being shorter than the brown, it simply says what we projected, we spend less than the projections. You will note that only program 2 and program 5, they spend according to the projections. If you look at them, at the other 3 programs, program 1, program 3, program 4, the projections did not really correspond or equate to the actual expenditure. If we go to the next slide, slide 3, as at the end of the second quarter, September, program 1 spent 38% of the budget of 245, projecting to underspend by 12.7. Mainly it's coming from the compensation of employees, which is about 6 million of that, and the remainder comes from goods and services. Program 2 projecting to underspend by 2.4. It spent, as at the end of September, 45.5 of the budget of 53, and the 2.4 projected under is because they have vacancies that they are currently filling. Program 3 projecting to overspend by 10.7. 10.7, it's a net figure. If we go inside, you'll see that there's projected underspending of 2.4 from COE and 13 million that is coming from the bank charges. So the 10 million relates to the bank charges. Program 4 projects to overspend by 1.4, mainly coming from consultants, and this will be corrected at adjustment estimate as we're moving towards adjustment, I think, in a month or so. Same thing applies to program 3. That projected over will be corrected at adjustment. We'll take the savings to programs like program 1, program 2, and program 5 and correct that. Program 5 projection to underspend by 2.4 in the main is coming from COE. Overall, Chair, the department was at 43.8% of its expenditures at the end of September. By economic classifications, you will see that the COE projecting to underspend by 23.5 and goods and services by 14.2. If we offset that, the difference, then it becomes the savings that we have, and we will have a remainder of that 5 million that we are showing right at the bottom that I said it will be transferred to the Department of Health. But all other pressures that are indicated there, like in goods and services and payment for capital assets and under transfers and subsidies, 612,000, they're all being corrected as we are preparing our final submission for adjustment estimates that will be tabled before the House in the month or so. We're using the savings identified from other programs to correct the pressures that are showing in other items within the department. The department is allowed to do so. However, the bank charges, we need to do something to correct that permanently going forward. Because what we've noted as a department, the use of doing away with the collecting of cash at the Department of Transport and using all those card swiping machines has attracted a lot of bank charges. Hence, you see that pressure of 13 million rand. Chair, I'm not sure. I'll be guided by yourself whether you want me to go down at the lowest level by programs or must I stop it at a departmental level?
Of course, I'm going to be guided by members. I'm not sure if we need to go into a program level. I'm not sure if it suffices to just leave it here at a departmental level. I don't think that there are major issues at this point with the Provincial Treasury. Can we allow it to be at this high level, if you can? Yeah, I think the affirmation I get from members is that we'll leave it at that high level.
Thank you very much.
Yes, okay. No, thank you so much. We can then proceed.
Okay.
Yes.
No, thank you very much, Chairperson. My presentation will be focused on 6 slides out of 31 that we have provided information to members on. I will then move to slide 2, which is the slide that we have now, which indicates that we are still working on the 5 programs that we have and reporting on the same. Then on our slide number 3, we are then indicating the number of indicators that we were executing in this particular quarter, as well as how we have fared. We had a total of 23 and we achieved 22. Only 1 was not achieved. But we are also indicating to members that the overall achievement of 96% also reflects or rather excludes the overachievement on a total of about 7 targets that our department has exceeded on in this particular quarter. Then slide number 5 is just a pie chart that I'm not going to bore members on, but then the critical one will be on slide number 5, where we are then indicating the overall performance per program, and also then indicating which program did not achieve its targets fully as planned. That particular program is then our program number 4, which is internal audit. And then if we were then to move to slide number 23, that is where we will then give members a detail or in terms of how many targets were then set and how many we achieved. We had a total of 40. We achieved 23 for program 4, which then gives us a 17 that were not achieved. But we are also indicating on slide number 24 to members as to what then contributed to that particular non-achievement. It is a wide range of factors, one of which, or rather it ranges from projects that were cancelled, projects that were actually postponed, as well as projects that were delayed as a result of capacity constraints that we had within internal audit. Like the CFO has indicated, the review of the structure that we had in the department was providing capacity to internal audit. So we're still busy filling the positions within internal audit, which I must indicate to members now that we have since finalized and all of their positions have since been filled. We are also then indicating that as part of our action plan to say going forward, we are not going to be worried much about capacity constraints in that particular program. But then because we also do get cancellations that are requested by departments, and where we feel that then results in delays, we do escalate that to the principals, as it were. And we're also assuring members that this non-achievement of our targets will then be dealt with in year, and we are affirming, or rather committing that by the end of the financial year, all of the targets that we had set for ourselves for this particular program would have been finalized and concluded. That then will bring me to the end of our presentation, if members will allow me to only focus on those 6, as it were.
Right. I think we are making progress, and members are quite comfortable. I'm hopeful. If there is any issue, honourable members, please raise your issue. So let's then proceed to the next presentation.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson, and good morning to you, Chairperson, as well as to the honourable members of the Finance Portfolio Committee. I will be taking you through the next presentation, which focuses on the mid-year budget performance for 2025-26 for departments. On slide 2, this just shows the presentation outline. We will be covering provincial owned revenue, budget performance. We will be looking at expenditure, conditional grants, infrastructure. We'll also be touching on funding that was specifically and exclusively appropriated, and we'll be raising significant matters at the end of the presentation. On the next slide, thank you. So the purpose of this presentation, as I've indicated, is we are providing a briefing to the Finance Portfolio Committee on the 25-26 mid-year budget performance for departments in the province of KwaZulu-Natal. While there is projected overspending significant of 7.5 billion, as the HOD has mentioned, some of this is expected to be offset by additional funding that the province will be receiving from National Treasury in this regard. And details of this will be given by the Honourable MEC during the adjustment estimate. And these funds will go towards easing in-year budget pressures. And this is funding that has been made available by the Minister of Finance. There's also some additional funding that will be allocated to departments towards easing various budget pressures. And this funding will be coming from provincial cash resources. And again, this will be detailed by the Honourable MEC of Finance during the 25-26 adjustment estimate. I'm on the next slide, slide 4. During the August bilaterals that we held with departments, honourable members, we engaged departments on their budget performance. At the time, it was for Q1 of 25-26 as well as the closeout for 2024-25. And those departments that were showing significant overspending or projecting to overspend at the end of this current financial year, they were reminded of Section 39.2 of the PFMA, and those departments were urged to take urgent steps to ensure that they remain within budget at the end of the financial year, and that they come up with fully costed turnaround plans that will indicate which steps will be taken for them to remain within budget. This presentation is also accompanied by a detailed report. There are various chapters in this report, and this covers the mid-year and projected year-end position of each of the departments or each of the votes. Each chapter will also contain a section that is titled Matters for Discussion, and in this section we raise very pertinent issues, and members are implored to use this when they perform their oversight role. I'm on slide 6, skipping to slide 6 of the presentation, where we will now be discussing revenue as at the end of Q2 of 25-26. Table 1 shows how revenue performed by department. So we see that compared to the mid-year projection, departments overcollected, and they overcollected by 2% compared to their projection. And if we look at it against the annual budget, which would be the last column, they also overcollected, and they've collected 51% of their revenue target for the year. On slide 7, we look at it by economic classification, and we see that transactions in financial and asset liabilities, that is the category that's showing the projected highest overcollection for the year. And on slide 8, we provide further details of this. And again, here we are saying that for the year to date, provincial departments have collected over 2 billion rand in revenue, and this is 102% against the mid-year projection. Most of the departments are projecting to overcollect at year end, and the projected overcollection is just over 74 million rand at the end of the year. I will be then explaining the variances, starting with the Department of Education. As at mid-year, they collected revenue above projections by 73.742 million. And this was mainly as a result of transactions in financial assets and liabilities. And this relates to a refund that the department received from SARS after the audit was finalized. This refund relates to appeals that the department made to SARS, and this was in relation to taxes that were paid in 2015 and 2016. Another contributing factor to this was higher than anticipated collection from tender fees, and this is because a new tender process commenced in the department, specifically for the National School Nutrition Program. Also contributing to this was revenue that the department collected from the auction of redundant vehicles. Currently, the department is projecting to overcollect at the end of the year, and they're projecting to overcollect on revenue by 57.543 million rand. Moving on to ETIA, Economic Development, Tourism and Environmental Affairs. As at mid-year, they have undercollected by 37.309 million. However, for the year end, they are projecting to overcollect by 9 million. I'll just touch on what has happened as at mid-year. So as at mid-year, they undercollected, and this was mainly due to significant undercollection on casino taxes, and this was driven by lower revenue from gambling taxes. For the year end, they are projecting to overcollect, as I've mentioned, by 9 million, and this is due to higher than anticipated revenue that they are expecting from the recovery of legal costs, and this relates to prior financial years. Moving on to COCTA, they are projecting, or they've shown a projected overcollection of 3.9 million, and they are still projecting to overcollect at year end by 3.2 million. And for COCTA, this largely relates to the recovery of unspent funds from various municipalities. And the detail of this is provided in the COCTA report. Health overcollected against their mid-year projection by 7 million. And this is mainly due to higher than anticipated collection from staff debts. And the department is anticipating to overcollect by about 3.32 million at the end of 25-26. The Department of Agriculture and Rural Development, by mid-year, they had overcollected by 3.6. However, they are projecting to undercollect by 4.3 million, and the department has been asked to relook at their projections because it seems unrealistic. Sale of goods and services, and this is in respect of lab services, academic services, as well as registration and tuition fees. These were higher. Sale of capital assets, and this is in respect of revenue from auction. This was lower. However, given the higher revenue on sale of goods and services, the department has been asked to relook at their projections because the projected undercollection does seem a bit unrealistic. I am moving to slide 10, Honourable Chair and Honourable Members, where we'll be looking at expenditure. Just to start off this section by discussing some of the changes that have happened as at mid-year that will be formalized in the adjustment estimates. Departments have undertaken various shifts and environments, and this has been done to offset spending pressures against various programs, sub-programs, and economic classification categories. And as I've explained, that these are detailed in each department's chapter, in each department's report. These changes will be formalized during the 2025-26 adjustments estimate, and the province is currently in the process of preparing for the adjustment estimate, and several funding requests are currently being considered by MINCOMBAT as well as the Provincial Executive Council. To give an indication of some of the changes that are visible in the next table, departments have been advised by National Treasury of conditional grant rollovers. I'm still on slide 10, apologies. Thank you. Departments have been advised by National Treasury of the provisional approval that they've received on 2 conditional grants. DARD has received provisional approval of 86.4 million rand, and this is in relation to the Comprehensive Agriculture Support Program, the CASP grant, after they experienced delays in the AgriHub produce implementation of the project. Education has also received provisional approval to roll over 3.314 million for the learners with profound and severe intellectual disabilities LPID grant. And this relates to invoices that could not be processed at the end of the year in relation to IT equipment, as well as other assistive devices. There's also an amount of 300 million that was approved for allocation to ETIA for transfer to Itala Development Finance Corporation, IDFC, and they will in turn process payments for operational costs to Itala SOC Limited. This 300 million is specific and exclusively appropriated, and these funds can only be used for that purpose. Provincial Treasury in the previous financial year suspended 20.177 million, and these funds have been reallocated back to Provincial Treasury in 25-26, and these funds are for the implementation of the Provincial Financial Recovery Plan. On slide 11, we've also received formal correspondence from National Treasury, and this is in relation to funds that the Minister of Finance will release in year towards easing budget pressures. And it must be noted that these funds were set aside when the Minister of Finance tabled the budget, the main budget in May, and these funds are earmarked specifically for education and health. And a portion of these funds will come through to the province via the equitable share, and some of that will come as conditional grant funding. Lastly, the Provincial Executive Council resolved that departments and public entities should make contributions towards offsetting the pressures in the Department of Health, and the Department of Health will thus receive this funding during the 25-26 adjustments estimate. I'm on slide 12, table 3, and in the adjustments column, you will see those adjustments that I've just made reference to. They amount to about 409 million rand. But this table does show that as at the end of September 2025-26, provincial departments are projecting to overspend by 7.523 billion rand. And the biggest contributor to that is the Department of Health, followed by the Department of Education, Public Works and Infrastructure. On the next slide, at economic classification, we do see that the pressure is mostly on goods and services, with projected overspending of 4.626 billion rand. There is a pressure as well on compensation of employees of 1.920 billion rand. There's also a pressure on transfers and subsidies to provinces and municipalities of around 829.726 million rand. On the next slide, I will be touching on the reasons for this projected over expenditure as at the end of Q2, starting with the department contributing the most to this. The Department of Health, they are projecting to overspend by 5.386 billion at the end of the year. The department has projected for the 2025 wage agreement in Q3 and Q4. However, this remains underfunded, despite the department receiving additional funds from National Treasury of about 334.384 million rand in the main budget. So this contributes significantly to the pressure. They are projecting to overspend by about 1.38 billion on compensation of employees, and this includes underfunding for existing staff. There is also pressure from accruals from 24-25 of about 3.267, and the projected over expenditure will need to be managed carefully to ensure that excessive accruals are not carried forward to 2026-27. And we do continue to engage the department on the department finalizing their savings plan to indicate how they plan to manage the budget pressures for the remainder of the year. In terms of the Department of Education, they are projecting to overspend by 899.587 million. Compared to 2024-25, the same period, so last year they were projecting to overspend by 2.36 billion for the same period, and we've brought that in to show the impact that the Section 18 intervention is having in the department, that the projected year-end overspending is quite less compared to the same period in the previous financial year. So the year-end over-expenditure is mainly projected against compensation of employees, and again, similar to Department of Health, they having pressures in terms of implementing the 2025 wage agreement, which is underfunded, despite the department also receiving additional funding from National Treasury for this. The department continues to be impacted by the carry-through of the 2021-22 MTF budget cuts. The department also has an issue, and a significant one, with accruals and payments not recognized to be paid in 2025-26, and this is just over 1.64 billion rand. And this is made up of accruals also from 2023-24 that the department has not settled in full, as well as accruals from 2024-25. In terms of the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure, the department is projecting to overspend by 826.810 million at the end of the year. And this is mainly against Program 2, transfers and subsidies to provinces and municipalities, largely due to the shortfall on municipal property rates. This amounts to 838.310 million. And the department has requested additional funding in this regard, and this will only be known in the lead up to the 25-26 adjustments. There is also a pressure that the department has identified under Program 1 Goods and Services, but this also relates to accruals from the previous year. I'm on slide 15, discussing the Department of Transport. The department is projecting to overspend by 319.298 million at the end of the year. The department's spending as at mid-year is about 756 million, and they've got accruals and payables with not recognized of 1.482 million. Important to note is that the department has brought in the pressure that they are experiencing in terms of the learner transport, the shortfall of 319.298 billion, and this is following the August engagement that we had, the bilateral meeting that we had with the department. The department did not project for their public transport operation grant PTOG pressure. The department is normally able to absorb the pressure within the equitable share. And with regard to learner transport services, the department has made a formal request for additional funding of 326.306 million. And again, this will only be known in the lead up to the 25-26 adjustments estimate. Office of the Premier is projecting to overspend by 75 million rand at year end. And this relates to the KZN Youth Empowerment Fund, for which the department has requested a rollover of these funds from 2024-25. The outcome of this rollover will be known towards the 25-26 adjustments estimate. There is also an issue that we picked up with the projections. So for the year to date, spending is quite low at 43.6%, and it's lower than the 50% benchmark. And this underspending is attributed to posts that have not been filled. So we did raise this with the department for them to relook their projections, because it will not be possible for compensation of employees to catch up as at Q2. So there may be savings in that regard that the department could identify. On slide 16, Provincial Legislature is projecting to overspend by 32.429 million at year end. And this is mostly against programs 1 and 2, against compensation of employees, goods and services, machinery and equipment. Important to note here is that this members' remuneration, statutory members' remuneration, shows a balanced budget at year end. However, the legislature does wait implementation of the members' salary increment. The proclamation is usually announced in the last quarter of the previous financial year, so around January or February, and as such, there has been a delay in the announcement. The legislature's projected overspending will be offset when the operational underspending from 2024-25, as well as the overcollection of revenue, is allocated in the 25-26 adjustments estimate. In terms of Provincial Treasury, this over-expenditure is mitigated by the projected under-expenditure that is shown by Provincial Treasury, about 5.3 million, and this is in relation to compensation of employees, and this is due to the delay that the department has been experiencing in filling budgeted vacant posts. I'm on slide 18, where we will be discussing conditional grant performance. And just to again mention that vote 3, you will see the adjustment of the 86.4 million. Vote 5, you will see the adjustment of the 3.314 million for the Learners with Profound Intellectual Disabilities grant. On slide 19, it shows that as at mid-year, conditional grant spending amounts to 12.467 billion rand, and this is lower than the mid-year projection of 14.172. And if we look at it against the annual budget, we see that conditional grant spending is at 47.1%, and all grants are projecting to be fully spent at the end of the financial year. On the next slide, we are discussing some of the rollovers that have taken place, and as I've mentioned, the two from DARD as well as education. The province is also awaiting correspondence from National Treasury regarding the 100 million rand rollover request for the Human Settlements Development Grant, HSDG, and these funds were received in March, and they were earmarked for the Alley Ridge housing development in Umsunduzi. As I've mentioned, the table shows conditional grant expenditure of 47.1%, and all grants are reflecting a balanced budget at year end. On slide 21, we make mention of the grants that are showing the lowest level of spending. The first two are the agriculture grants, and important to mention is that given the seasonal nature of agriculture, it is not unusual to see spending as at the end of Q2 lower than projected, and these grants expenditure is expected to pick up from Q3. Just to mention that the CASP grant was significantly low at 24% of major projection, 9.6% of the budget. This was mainly due to the delay that the department experienced in receiving approval for the business plan from the National Department of Agriculture, and this has an impact on transfers that the department makes to Agribusiness Development Agency, as well as projects that are funded by ADA. And as I've mentioned, that it's not unusual for this time of the year for the CASP grant to be performing lower than projected, and we are expecting grant activity to pick up from Q3. Similar to the Ilima Lizema grant, the grant underspent as at mid-year, 15.7%, and the lower than projected expenditure was due to slow progress that was made on Block 6A subsurface drainage, as well as other irrigation pump and rehabilitation projects undertaken under this grant. Moving on to slide 22. We also zoom into the Health Facility Revitalization Grant, HFRG, having only spent 47.8% of the mid-year projection, or 27% of the annual budget. And this low spending is attributed to delays in filling various grant-funded posts, as well as the delays in delivery of medical equipment in respect of health technology services projects. It is expected that expenditure will accelerate in the third quarter, according to the business plan, and the department is projecting to fully spend this grant at the end of the year. We've also picked up 2 EPWP grants that performed below 40%, and this was under Human Settlements and COGTA. For Human Settlements, the grant spent 16.3%, and this grant relates to job creation in specific areas where labor-intensive delivery methods can be maximized. And this grant is also expecting to be fully spent at year end. The EPWP grant under COGTA only spent 242,000 Rand against a projection of 2.7 million, and they are projecting to be fully spent. Moving on to slide 24. We will be discussing infrastructure. Looking at table 6, we see that as at the end of Q2, departments spent 9.198 billion of their infrastructure budget against a projection of 8.982 billion, which shows that their spending is higher than projection by 2.4%. And as at mid-year, or as compared to the annual budget, expenditure was at 50.6%, and the trends are discussed on slide 25. The department showing the highest projected over expenditure, Department of Health, as well as COGTA, and these departments were affected by findings by the Auditor General. I will start with the Department of Health, showing projected over expenditure of 111.399 million, and this is largely against maintenance and repair current, as a result of a reclassification of some of the projects under maintenance, and this is in line with the finding by the Auditor General, as well as non-infrastructure due to additional equipment that is being procured under the HFRG, Health Facility Revitalization Grant. COGTA was also has also implemented recommendation as per the AG, and they are reclassifying electrification water projects, as well as the construction of disaster management centers from current to capital projects. And this has resulted in significant projected over expenditure of 113.683 million against new infrastructure projects capital. However, their department has indicated that they will shift funds from goods and services to cover this projected over expenditure. On slide 26, moving on to slide 27, we are discussing funding that was at the time of tabling the main budget considered specifically and exclusively appropriated. The departments, as at mid-year, spent 2.359 billion against the projection of 2.448 billion, which shows slight under-expenditure. And if you compare it to the annual budget, there is over-expenditure. If you're looking at it against the 50% benchmark, departments spend 62.4%, and departments are projecting to overspend by 8 to 9.698 million rand. On slide 28, we discuss the main trends, starting with the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure, and they are projecting to overspend by 829.698 million. The main contributor of this is the pressure that the department is experiencing against municipal property rates, the payment of municipal property rates. Sport, arts and culture is also projecting to overspend, and this is due to transfers that the department made to Upongolo municipality, and this is for the construction of the Belgrade Fitness Center. Due to budget constraints in the previous financial year, the department had stopped transfers, and the transfers were then increased in 25-26. Education is, however, expecting to underspend, and this is against improving infrastructure support. This relates to payments for assistant program managers in 12 districts responsible for updating the IRM infrastructure reporting model, and there are a few vacancies, one of a civil engineer as well as 2 admin clerks under this funding that the Department of Education has under this program. Social development is also expecting to underspend, and this is across various programs, and this is due to savings that were realized in cases where funds were not accounted for by the various non-profit organizations after the bank reconciliation exercise. There were also fewer beneficiaries who were supported as demand for services offered by the department is mostly demand-driven. In terms of significant matters that we'd like to bring to the attention of members, I will start off by saying that although there is additional funding that is coming from National Treasury in the 25-26 adjustments, this will only ease some of the pressure that the Department of Education and Health is experiencing, and departments are reminded that they need to take necessary steps to ensure that they remain within budget at the end of the year. Another significant issue is the Department of Transport. The budget is insufficient to cater for the high demand of services for learner transport as well as bus subsidies. Current spending is higher than expected, mainly due to underfunding of learner transport services program, as well as the increase in claims from operators because of escalation adjustment, as well as expenditure that was accrued from the previous financial year. Lastly, a significant matter remains Department of Public Works and Infrastructure, with the department projecting to overspend by 826.8 million, largely due to the shortfall in municipal property rates. And the department has formally requested for additional funding in this regard. However, if no additional funds are received by the department, this means that the department will have to demonstrate how they plan to mitigate this pressure in year to ensure that they remain within budget. Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. I am done.
Thank you so much for these presentations. I want to take guidance from the members. I see that this presentation, they link. I'm not sure if you want us to pause here and then take discussions. Then the presentation on the budget, draft budget and the APP, do it after the presentation, after the discussion. Yes. Oh, there's still one, sorry. Oh, yes, sorry. My apologies, sorry. My apologies on that. I had thought that we had done it. Sorry. Can I give you to do that last presentation? And then after this presentation, honorable members will take a discussion, because all of these ones, I think they relate to each other, as opposed to the draft budget and the APP. Tea is ready for anyone to go and grab, and let's have a working session. Where we can go and grab some tea, come back, continue with the work, rather than us breaking. We are doing very well in terms of time. I'm not sure if members would want us to take 10 minutes break, have tea, and then come have a discussion after this presentation. I'm not sure what we would want us to do, honorable members. I will take guidance from your good self. But let's take the presentation for now, while you think what we will do, whether we'll take a break, then take a discussion or whatever that you decide to do. Yes.
Good morning, honourable members and Chair. Let me just find the microphone. I'm Liesl Curtis, for those members who are not familiar with me. On the public entity slides, we will quickly look at the revenue collected by mid-year, the expenditure. We look at the infrastructure spending, rationalisation, the status, where we are, and how it's affected the mid-year, and then raise significant issues. On slide 3, the summary of revenue collected by mid-year. Just the actual mid-year, you'll see the amounts that were actually collected against the budget. You'll see the percentages there. I'm just speaking to the bottom line. At mid-year, 51.9%. It's not bad. It's on target. At 50%, we normally do the benchmark. You'll see there are outliers in between, ADA being one, then also the Growth Fund Agency, and I'll raise those matters just now. Table 2, just look at the composition of the revenue collected by mid-year. The departmental transfer contributing to the highest percentage at 51.1%. Then there's rollovers. At least the rollovers coming into this year is now smaller than that came from the previous year. So it does show that the entities are spending a bit better. Own revenue making up 33.6%. And then there's also VAT payments for some of the entities where they attract VAT on the transfer from the department. The total composition of the revenue collected by mid-year, we're looking at 2.757 billion that the entities had received. On the next slide, slide 5, the funds that are rolled over into 25-26 from 24-25, I just need to highlight the distinction between a Schedule 3C and a 3D entity. The 3Cs are substantially funded by Provincial Revenue Fund, where the 3Ds are meant to generate the government business enterprises, so they are meant to generate some of their own revenue because of they have got financial and operational authority to carry on business activities. So in our province, IDFC, the Growth Fund Agency, and Richards Bay IDZ are the 3D business enterprises. And then you'll see in Table 2, we did not reflect funds rolled over for them from the prior years. They receive project funds, they put them in reserves, and they bring them back into the income statement as they spend them. They do not need Provincial Treasury's approval to retain those funds. So in terms of the IDFC, they have got multi-year projects that's accumulated, and the value at mid-year was 392. We'll look at it quickly in Table 4. And then the growth funds accumulated surpluses for the special transfers. There's 24.3 million there from Office of the Premier, which have since been recalled, and then also 63 million for Operation Vula that they are the implementing agent for ETIA. I'm not going into detail into the next slide. That's just the specific projects that are funded by the shareholder departments. And you'll see that there's discretionary funding, which is what the entity can use to pay operational expenses. And then there are specific ring-fence funds that they need to spend as per instruction or funding agreement of the department on those things. So if you look at, for example, Itala Development Finance Corporation there's 399 that they receive there is purely for SOC Limited and for ETIA projects. They fund their own operations through other means, through their own business activities. So those are the significant projects that you can see in the third column there. If we go to the specific IDFC projects funded by the shareholder departments, the first column is the funds at the start of the year. So IDFC sat there with about 138 million from ETIA, and then there's smaller from the Department of Agriculture and Rural Development, and then there's also the DTRC. And then there's new money that's in the main budget for this year. Then you'll also see the adjusted budget. The 21 million there, that's decreased from the Ndumo Retail Development Services Shopping Mall. That then goes to Itala Sock Limited to help them with their operational expenses while their accounts are frozen. So at closing balance at mid-year, we're getting to 131 million that is sitting with the IDFC. The revenue collected by mid-year, as the HOD, she spoke about the expenditure being low, 51.9% of the adjusted budget of 5.3. Of the revenue collection, the transfers received from the parent departments amounted to 1.388 billion. Significant own revenues collected by the following entities is Imvelo. They collected 93 million, and that's largely related to their tourist income. There's also smaller projects that are funded by NDT to the value of 4 million. Dubai Trade Port collected 134 million, and that's largely in respect of cargo handling fees, ICT services, property rentals from tenants, and interest on positive cash balances in the bank account. The IDFC collected 487 million, and that's largely ascribed to bad debt recoveries, fee income, and interest charge on loan disbursements, as well as property leases. KZN Growth Fund, they collected 42 million, and that's largely from interest earned on loans awarded to clients and cash balances in the bank account. KZN Era collected 24 million, and that's from licensing, registration, and monitoring fees. The Sharks Board collected 27 million, largely from meshing fees. Richard Bay collected 39 million, and that's largely from interest earned on funds transferred toward operating expenses for land acquisition and for capital developments, and then from rental on land leases. What is not reflected here is the money from the Agri Hub that's transferred from DARD. The 86 million that was rolled over from 24-25 have not yet been brought into the budget of the entity by mid-year, and the entity only anticipates doing this by December, pending the progress on that project. If we go to projected year-end revenue, there's slight overcollection there, about 16 million, and then that's also offset then by undercollection if you look at Itala, and then KZN Era. The summary of expenditure, that's where my HOD said was fairly low. It's 44.0%, where we normally want to see 50% by mid-year. However, the entities did have excuses and reasons, which we will go into shortly. Just the composition, you'll see compensation of employees, 42%, goods and services, also 42%, transfers and subsidies, 0.2%, capital assets, 10.7%. So that's the composition. They have spent 2.166 billion by mid-year. At mid-year, the aggregate was 44% of the budget. I've already gone through the composition. ADA, dismal slow spending, 35.5%. And as Hobie said, there's problems with the CASP grant that has not yet been signed in full by the Department of Agriculture. But in the past, the entities and the department has been able to accelerate spending, also dealing with infrastructure projects, with agricultural projects that are sped up and seasonal. So we hope to see better spending there. Imvelo spent 47.7%. And that slow spending can mainly be ascribed to 27 vacant posts. They are in the process of being filled. And then also they've deferred the 24-25 audit because of their cybersecurity attack in Feb 2025, and they're still busy rebuilding the system. Then there's also the TRERS project, which experienced delays due to engineering assessments, which needed to first be undertaken before they could construct buildings for the community beneficiation projects. And then there were also maintenance projects which were rolled over from the previous year, such as the upgrades at Hilltop and Luteni Reserve. Those are still underway. Dubai Trade Port spent only 41%, and that's due to vacant posts. They are in the process of filling them, but there are also some annual payments which have been structured to be paid in the second half of the year, such as their software licenses and insurance premiums. Then there were also the refurbishment of the cargo terminal and the design of an automatic meter reader system that was deferred. And then they also struggled to procure consumables for the tissue culture laboratory because they did not receive responsive bids. Itala Development Finance, they spent 47.1%. That's largely ascribed to ongoing remodeling of 4 IDC properties, and they have not commenced with that at year end. There were various issues ranging from land ownership challenges, etc. Then there's also the rebuild of the 9 properties that were damaged in the unrest in July 2021. They are at various stages of completion. There's also a large number of vacancies that contribute to the low rate of spending. KZN TAFA spent 49.8%, so that's pretty close on target. And then the Growth Fund Agency only spent 35.8%. It's very low spending, and that's due to subdued investment activity. And they also need to still finalize the business turnaround strategy and organizational structure. KZN ERA spent 45%. Low rate of spending was largely due to 20 vacant posts. And then KZN Sharks Board spent 46%, also mainly due to vacant posts. Richards Bay spent only 27.7%. There are vacancies, but the major contributor is the delays in the appointment of transaction advisors for the gas hub in the port of Richards Bay, and also an enterprise development facilitator. Then there's the enterprise resource planning system, which were deferred to 26-27, and the infrastructure and maintenance spending has also been very low. Some planned maintenance projects were deferred to the 4th quarter, and there's the ongoing construction that's happening for the top structure at ProStop Paints and Buerta Industries. There had been some scope changes, and they are waiting for DTIC to approve additional funding. The bulk water pipeline was still in the tender process, and then also they had, because of bad weather, they experienced delays with the electrical upgrades in Phase 1F. TIC spent 42.2%, and that's largely due to challenges experienced with special projects that were assigned to them, such as the one-stop shop centres, the leather processing hub, and the customer relation management portal. The Drakensberg Cable Car project has not progressed, pending confirmation of additional funds or a scope change from ETIA after the bids received exceeded the budget. Then the high spending entities by mid-year, Zulu Royal Household, and that's because of an additional 18 beneficiaries, which were not budgeted for. Moses Kotane Research spent 64, and that's largely because of 35 million that they received from Mercita that had been paid into a separate ring-fenced account to be managed by a fund manager, so that is reflected as fully spent. And then Amalfa, close to target, slightly over at 50.2%. They appointed 7 interns, and the equipment and related costs then pushed them over the 50% benchmark. Projected year-end expenditure, pretty close to target at 98.4, but you'll see there are a few that has got underspending, which we're looking at about 80 million for the year-end. If we look at that, the IDFC is projecting to underspend, and that's by 60 million. That's largely due to the capital refurbishment projects, the remodeling and property rebuilds of the damaged properties. The underspending is partly offset by projected overspending on the provision for credit losses from the non-payment of installments and loans. The Growth Fund projects to underspend by only 54 due to vacancies. KZN ERA is projecting to underspend, largely in relation to vacant posts. Richards Bay is projecting to underspend by 19 million, and that's due to delays in capital projects, as I've alluded to. And then also TIC is projecting to overspend by a slight amount of 460,000, and that's largely because of unbudgeted event hosting fees for export promotion events and staff exit costs that were not budgeted for adequately. On the infrastructure, these entities listed here are the ones that have got maybe not big budget, but the more significant infrastructure budgets. And you'll see that there's Zulu, Dubi, Ezemvela, Richards Bay, Itala, and the Growth Fund Agency. So if we just look at Zulu, Zulu Royal Household Trust, they spent 3.1 million. That's 59.7% of their budget of 5.2. And that was mostly on maintenance and repairs of the cold rooms, minor plumbing, electrical repairs, and then floodlights for the Royal Reed Dance. They project to fully spend the budget by year end. Dubai Tradeport spent 65%, inclusive of maintenance. The spending against maintenance was low at 25%, but due to the refurbishment of the cargo terminal, which have not taken place in the first half. The other capital projects that contributed to the high rate of spending was the construction of the warehouse on Earth 769 at Trade Zone 2, and that was completed by mid-year. Ezemvela spent 22 million. Their budget there was 63. So slow spending is largely because of Lutania Reserve chalet renovations, the Hilltop chalet renovations, the pathway lighting replacement, and the restaurant decking. They were all still in progress by mid-year. Then the road maintenance project at Midmar Reserve was almost complete. The entities had to put in some of its own money after it had exhausted its previous budget assigned by Treasury. And then there's also the Mpila Camp Safari Tents replacement and the gas upgrade projects, as well as the QP head office upgrades that are still in progress. Richards Bay, I think I've already covered most of the things there. They've only spent 7.9% of its infrastructure budget. That's very low, but there have been ongoing construction delays with the top structures for Prostar and Boertes, the bulk water pipeline, and the electrical upgrades in Phase 1F. They are projecting to underspend by 19 million at year end. The IDFC spent 24.9, and as I said, that is to do with the ongoing remodeling of 4 buildings, and then there's also the damaged buildings from the unrest. They were waiting for money from the insurance companies, and that rebuild of 9 properties are still underway. They are projecting to underspend by 134 million by year end in respect of those ongoing projects. The Growth Fund budget to spend 4.7. They moved to a new building, so that's on leasehold improvements. The BOQ that came through for their proposed designs were more than the 4.7 million, so they decided to phase the project over 2 years, starting this year, ending in next year. On to slide 23. I'm going to skip the first few slides because that's the history of rationalization. I think I have discussed that every time I come here, so members should be familiar. It's just what has happened since 2016-17 on the rationalization, but where we are right now, the implications on the 24-25 mid-year budget performance, the entities have not been able to fill all of their critical vacant posts. So it not only affects on the compensation budget, but it also affects on capacity and the ability to run the projects. However, the cost savings that are resulting from the vacant posts have not yet been quantified, and the baselines going forward have not been reduced as a result of the rationalization. So we have not seen cost savings as such. However, we have informed entities that all the additional costs associated with the mergers would need to be funded. They would need to absorb it from their savings. And then some entities at this point are also experiencing governance challenges. There are many key vacant positions, such as CEOs and CFOs, which are not filled currently. Okay, there are a number of issues that need to be considered and monitored as we're going through the year. So the slow rate of spending at 44% of the adjusted budget, the capacity challenges, which in turn leads to savings and operational costs. Implementation of maintenance and capital projects remains a challenge for the entities. Vacancy savings were partly offset by budgeted pressure relating to overtime costs, acting allowances, and staff exit costs. And then also some entities had to outsource some of their critical functions, which then elevated the costs. The majority of entities project to accelerate spending over the remainder of the year. This may not be realistic. The merging entities need to undertake extensive reprioritization within their budgets to align the funds for priority spend programs and also to make some provision towards the implementation of the mergers. And then the merger of Ezemvelo and Sharks Board, after no developments in the last year, has started to move again, with the final draft bill now ready for certification. Just on the next slide, the reds are where you can see that there are capacity issues at critical strategic positions. So it's a fair amount of vacant CFOs and CEO positions that also impacts on the operations of the entity. Thank you.
No, thank you so much for these presentations. I'm sure members would interact. I had asked for guidance, honorable members, whether we would want us to have just a 10-minute break, or you want us to proceed and engage, and then thereafter we'll then have the last presentation, which then will be the draft budget and the APP. If we can do that, okay. So we can continue with the engagements now. Okay. Let me start with Honorable Dex, and then, and then Clever Queen, Honorable Seme, Honorable Kanye, Honorable Togotela, Honorable Brother Seth, and then we'll end with Honorable Tiklek.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chairperson. Firstly, we would like to, I think I'm saying we, I speak on behalf of all of us, or I would like to thank the department for this comprehensive report. And just to make the comment that the Department of Treasury is one of the best in the province. Not is one of the best, is the best. And for a number of years now that the department has been shining, actually. However, there's just one concern I have with the department, is this thing of the late payment of service providers.
I think you are a bit lower.
Sorry.
I'm not sure, we can't hear you properly.
The one issue I have with the department is the late payment of service providers.
Okay, got it. I'm in.
That is an issue. That is an issue that the department will have to, but I mean the department must lead by an example, because we know that the departments that are, other departments are very famous for doing this kind of thing of not paying service providers. So I think the department needs to look at it, the issue of late payment of service providers. But let me just start then, that's for the department, the late payment of service providers. But let me start with the Office of the Premier. The report notes there will be an overspending of 75 million rand by next end of this financial year. Now, I just want to ask a question, because when I look at it, I may be wrong, but I want the department to guide me. That 75 million rand, I believe, is for that youth payments that was taken by that youth fund. So it seems like the Office of the Premier, knowing not having funds, went ahead and issued monies to youth in this province, knowingly that they do not have a budget for it, and therefore it will now create an overspending. So it seems like it was a deliberate overspending, this one, because they knew they don't have money, but they had to give this youth the money. So we'll have an overspend. That's the first one. Then we come to the Department of Education. Department of Education is I'm very concerned about the norms and standards in the department. The supply of learning materials, learning and teaching materials to schools. Now, again, there is projected overspending. in this department. And I think that Treasury also contributes to the overspending in this department. Because during the budget process, we said more money must be made available for by Treasury for the Department of Education, because we are saying that there will be overspending if Treasury does not make more monies available to this department. Now, Treasury have an approach that they have taken, that they will have austerity measures where they believe that there must be budget cuts, and but I believe that you are actually contributing to the overspending in the Department of Education. For example, for the norms and standards for learning materials, I've seen that the MEC for Finance had a meeting with National Treasury, and funding was made available. I think some money was given to the department to Treasury for Education, which was about 800 million rand. However, instead of the department giving the education department that money for norms and standards, they actually instructed the department to use from the department's own budget. They say use from your own budget to purchase the learning materials, use from your own budget. So by Treasury giving such an instruction, use from your own budget, they are now going to create an overspending for the department, because they're taking the money from somewhere else within their own budget. Instead of Treasury transferring that money, 800 million rand from National Treasury that they went to seek for to the department, they then say use from your own budget, which will create an overspending. So I want the department to look at that. Maybe we should find, because I'm not a proponent of austerity measures, maybe we should find a balance between austerity measures and budget cuts and vis-a-vis funding of department. We must have an in-between road on that day, because we're going to push this department deeper into problems. And education is very close to me, this department, because I have a proper understanding of the education system in this country, in this province. And I know learners that are getting proper education versus the learners from the rural areas in KwaZulu-Natal, and which the education is terrible. I'm using my phone, I made notes on my phone, sorry about it. Now the thing is, other messages coming in. Now, this thing this budget cuts of the education department is going to affect our learners, and I then cannot, the chair, I cannot condemn the education department for overspending, because I understand why they are overspending. So I want the Treasury to deal with this issue here. I think Treasury is capable. We have capable people here. I'm very pleased to see six women out of 8 people here, only 2 males, and a youth. I think a young male and a middle male, and then we see 6 females. I think it's very competent department. First time I see a department like this here, so it's good. I think the departments can deal with these issues, and they are doing a very good job. Now, there's few more questions I want to ask here, which is. Few more questions that I would like to ask is, I need to ask a few more questions. On the overall budget performance and the benchmarking, I see that there's a 62.4% material spent so far. Now that's above the 50% straight line benchmark. What I want to know from departments, which departments are driving this deviation, and what corrective measures do you all have in place to deal with this issue? And then that 829.7 million projected overspend is very, very huge. Do you all have contingency plans in case National Treasury, because we know how the National Minister of Finance behaves, in case the National Treasury does not approve funding in the adjustment estimate. Because the national minister, he'll just come, I know him personally, and I know how he is. He just come say there's no funding and cannot give you all. I know the anti-act room at national level. And then we're going to have a problem if there's no contingency plans in place. And what's the plans of the department of the financial, the treasury? What plans does treasury have in place to hold departments accountable for staying within the budget for by the 31st of March of 2026, especially those projected overspending? I don't know how you're going to hold these departments accountable, because there is going to be overspending by 31st of March 2026. Now, they must be accountable. You must hold them accountable. But at the same time, understand that the austerity measures is affecting the departments and they will overspend. So how do you actually hold them accountable? When we know, when we stood there and we approved this budget, we knew that there will be overspending by the departments. We knew, because there was accruals, there was everything, and we knew you're going to overspend. So how are you going to hold them accountable? How do you actually hold departments accountable when we approve budgets that we know that will overspend? And then public works and infrastructure, there's a 826.8 million rand overspend. I just need to know what is the exact shortfall in municipal property rates, and why is this not anticipated in the 25-26 budget? Furthermore, which municipalities contribute the largest property rates claims and have payment plans or disputes been escalated? There's a thing about the non-payment. Yeah, there's the non-payment of municipal rates by our departments to municipalities. Has the department modeled in the impact of the non-payment of rates and municipal services? For example, water and electricity. And because it's going to be cut off, the buildings was cut off not so ago, the other day. They will model and factored in that. Then there's the issue of the Pongola municipality. No, let me not go into that one. Again, the education department, I think, but it's minor. I see there's 3 posts of the 42 posts are vacant. Excuse me, one is a civil engineer and 2 admin clerks. In your presentation, is this actually causing an underspending on infrastructure support? Are the full posts underperforming? Are these posts actually underperforming? Excuse me, my throat. The underspending, are you going to, I see there's also underspending. Are we going to, can we not, department not consider relocating this underspending to schools, to education department, where we can actually deal with the issue of school repairs and sanitation? And those are the issues here. I'll leave the issue of the social development. But there's a problem with social development. If they give me a second, I'll come back to the social development issues. Let me just see what issue are the pressing issue I want to raise. Okay. Rebecca, education, very close to me. Do you have any plans in place to revise the land transport policy, the radius limit, and the radius limit and the shared services, in order to reduce cost? I don't know how it's going to affect the children, but we need to find ways of reducing costs. But if you give me that, there's issues of social development that I want to raise, but I won't raise it now. And maybe you give me a second chance, the Python, and I'll raise the issues under social development. And also one too on the thing, what you call it, the sports and recreation. So those are my questions for now, Chair. Thank you very much. I hope I was clear. Thanks.
Okay. No, thank you so much. Can we take those questions so that we can finish with the honorable text, and then we'll move to the next honorable member, finish with him, next honorable member. I think that would be best. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Honourable Dirks, for the compliments to my team. I fully concur with you. I really am very fortunate to lead a team like this. In terms of the late payments, this is something we're taking very seriously. There were only 4 invoices in the entire year that weren't processed on time. However, we did take an EXCO resolution that those officials would be, there would be consequence management because it's not acceptable. As you said, we need to lead by example. In terms of the 75 million rand that is projected as overspend by Officer Premier, there was 100 million rand that was budgeted in the 24-25 financial year for the Youth Fund. Unfortunately, they did not disperse the amounts during the financial year, and so they've requested a rollover of that amount of money. So that is a process that we'll be bringing to you during the adjustment estimates. So they have not dispersed any of that money to date. There was a balance of about 22 million that the Growth Fund had, which is now subsequently in the last week being transferred as well to make up the 100 million rand. So it's not something that was announced. It wasn't, resources were made available in the budget process. In terms of education, we echo the same concerns around the challenges, and we know that the historic budget cuts have affected the issues around norms and standards and the learner LTSM. We have not issued any instruction for a department to use their own funds. Any additional funding that has been allocated to the province, specifically for education, has been made available to the department, and there is some good news in that respect, but the MEC had asked that we wait for the MinCombud meeting for those to be formalized, but there is good news for the Department of Education. In any additional resources that we do fund, in fact, education and health are the first departments that we do allocate money to. I think it's important to highlight that the austerity measures are not budget cuts. They are saying instead of buying newspapers, instead of wasting money on events, let's redirect that money to service delivery, like improving the type of education that our learners will receive. So austerity measures are not budget cuts, and there haven't been budget cuts in the current financial year. I'm not familiar with, and maybe the team would know about the 800 million, but we're not aware of that funding. And certainly if it had been available, we would have made it available. The good news with COE for this year on education is the gap between what was supposed to be budgeted and the final agreed to amount was made available by National Treasury. So that was something that we didn't receive in the past and that we have received. I think our challenge as Treasury is that the department took their PPN numbers to Cabinet. Now your PPN numbers are the numbers of teachers that you would allocate to each school. And unfortunately, Cabinet approved that, and that is unaffordable. It requires an additional 1.6 billion rand, which the department doesn't have. So unfortunately, certain decisions are being taken that are not funded and finds the department in the situation that they're in. Then in terms of the overspend, the report goes into quite a substantial detail, and mainly it is the health and education. Health and education have tabled financial recovery plans, which we are working with them. We won't see that turning the situation around anytime soon. It's a medium to long-term plan. But wherever we see departments having spending pressures, we do write to them. We do have engagements with them. In the bilaterals, we raise all these concerns that we have, and they are expected then to present a recovery plan. So as an example, recently we had COCTA that we're presenting projected overspend, and we then undertook an engagement and a discussion with them to have to reprioritize within their budgets. And in the main, most of the departments have been able to correct those. We unfortunately cannot take consequence management against accounting officers. That is a responsibility of the executive authorities, and recently the Premier and our MEC have put in place a mechanism to enhance that action that needs to be taken. However, what we can do is we can withhold certain approvals. So, for example, when COCTA wanted to appoint a number of posts, we said, given that you're projecting an overspend holistically as a department, we can't possibly consider that. So we really are trying as Treasury to hold the departments to account. With Public Works, the overspend obviously is specifically to property rates. Again, this is because they have not been properly funded. It is a major challenge in looking at the numbers, and we simply don't have the reserves to allocate towards that. We wouldn't have, unfortunately, the information that the Honourable Member has requested around the municipalities, but we do know that the department is engaging with municipalities around payment plans. We have been asked to attend some of those meetings. We know eThekwini's meeting is coming up soon. So they are fully aware of it. It's not something that was not anticipated. And obviously, again, wherever there are reserves, we are trying to assist the department. They have recently advertised more than 80 properties that they are selling. So they're trying to reduce the properties that are not being used so they can reduce the property rates liability. But we are going to be with this problem for a few years. If you look at the budget allocations over the MTF, we are giving quite a significant allocation in 2 years' time, and hopefully we will be able to normalize the situation. But it does have a detrimental effect on service delivery when offices are closed, particularly hospitals and schools. So it is a concern and something we are trying to deal with. I think then in terms of underspending, in the main, those departments that are showing underspending are where the allocation needs to be made to the Department of Health. So as we saw, Provincial Treasury as an example, we show underspending, but that is because it's the commitment that we need to make towards health. Etia as well, there was an allocation that they made to Italo Soc Limited. So there are explanations around that. And I would urge the honourable members, in terms of the documents that have been handed out, will assist you with your mid-year engagements with the departments and entities. It does go into extensive detail that can guide you, as well as questions at the end, which are probing questions, aligned to some of the questions the honourable member has mentioned as well. There is one question which I couldn't answer. It's around the infrastructure. Couldn't hear the member clearly, but maybe Nelly could answer. Thanks.
There's also a mouse that you can use.
Okay. Thank you very much, Honourable Chairperson, honourable members. Good morning. I will deal with the issue of the infrastructure-funded posts. Those posts do impact because the department needs to have the full complement. Those posts are also funded from the Education Infrastructure Grant. So as Treasury, we support that departments fill all of those posts that are funded from the infrastructure grant. I think my HOD has alluded to the report that we have issued in terms of the detail. For public works, if you go to page 250, you will see that for municipal property rates, the shortfall is 838 million. 0.310. So that's the shortfall. And I think over the years, whenever we table the main budget, we do indicate that we need to correct the baseline for scholar transport as well as municipal property rates. As soon as the fiscus is able to correct those baselines, we will correct them. So every year in the adjustments, we always try to look at the provincial cash resources to assist those two departments. And also, let me also echo what my HOD has alluded to, the 800 million. We're not aware of that allocation. However, the provisional allocations that the Honourable MEC for Finance set aside when he tabled the main budget, those have been communicated to the province, and those will then be included in the adjustments estimates that the Honourable MEC Rogers will table in this House, hopefully early in December. But all the funds that we have received for education have been allocated, and some of the funds have been released in terms of the emergency, so they don't have to wait for the adjustments. So the cash has been made available to the province, and all of those have been made available to the various departments. Thank you very much.
No, thank you so much. Honourable Dex, any follow-ups? We're comfortable.
Let me give other members the opportunity.
Okay. Thank you so much. Honourable CQ. You can use the mouse. You know, there's a mouse there. This thing is called a mouse.
No, there is no mouse here.
Tell them what they will take the budget.
Okay, thanks, Honourable Chair. Thanks to Treasury for the very detailed reports that they have presented before us. And we appreciate the good work that you continue to do for our province. And I think we will be glad if the good work we are doing can be done in all the departments of our province so that we become a good province, not in a little corner of Treasury, you know, because we are continuing to do so. I think my colleague on the issue of of the targets not achieved, 2 targets on the first presentation, I think it is concerning, but I think the HOD have responded on it. But my concern was based on the fact that, on the reason that made it not to be paid. It is said it is due to the delays in the sign, and then it lead now to that problem of not, achieving a target. Secondly, it's around the issue of a part of what made you not to achieve your targets. I don't know what is a problem in that. I know that maybe it can be difficult because of the technicality of your department, feel like they are discriminated by the government. So maybe if we can focus on that one. 8% vacancy rate increased. I remember that previously it was 6 or 6 point something. To say, how are you going to cap this increase in regard to the vacant post? Because we are having a concern. Our people are not employed, They always, throw stones to government to say that they don't employ us. We know that government is not an employing agent, but they must come up with conducive policies to attract the investors to employ. But on our side, if we do have vacancies, I think it's, especially if they are budgeted, I think it's critical that they need to be filled in. Maybe you can share with us what's a problem of not really filling in the post, because we were glad last time we say 8. Maybe when you come, it will be less than that, but we see that it's escalating. Maybe if you can share with us what is it that you can done to fast track this filling of vacancies going forward. Chair, I think my colleague next to me has covered me in regard to the Department of Education. What I want to really check, firstly, is the one that my colleague raised. Education is estimating, according to the reports, to overspend by 899.5 million. But I think they are trying to do their best, because when you do the comparison for the previous year, it was 2.3 billion, in the previous year, which means to say that there is something that is being done to really correct these challenges that they are having going forward. But I think my colleague covered me. What I wanted to check is in regard to we had the AG of South Africa presenting the outcome of Department of Education. They did indicate that the challenge is funding to the department. And they also indicated the issue, which is also, we had a concern as members. They said the Department of Education has huge irregular expenditure. But what concerns the most is that those irregular expenditure have been transferred to assessment. It was a great concern to us, and we raised question to say, why is this material irregularities raised by AGs was not finalized? And we found that there is no budget to deal with those particular matters, which is still the problem of the budget. But in our discussion, we were saying we believe that even if they don't have a budget, But if Treasury can work with them, assist them, to investigate those irregularities that have been put in the assessment, I think it will really fast track the issue of irregular expenditure in that particular department, because they did say that they don't have finance. Our belief was that Treasury and OTP may really maybe assist. We appreciate also that Treasury has seconded their staff to other departments to really assist. But we feel very strongly to that irregular expenditure that is huge and then hidden in the assessment. It's something that needs to be really attended to. Maybe we'll hear from Treasury what is it that they can do to work with this department to deal with these irregular expenditures that is put under assessment. The other one, Chair, yeah, I have dealt with that. The other one, Honorable Chair, is the issue of Department of Transport. But you have tried, the department has tried to respond to it. But it is a great concern, this thing of learnership. The Department of Transport is doing very well to try and deal with this and education. But when it comes to this thing of learnership, they found themselves wanting, So I don't know, because Ms. Shezi has indicated that is the issue of the budget and so on, but if they get the resources, they will prioritize that. But I'm putting the emphasis that maybe if this department can be assisted, because actually it's a Department of Education, but this is a service, like a service provider, Department of Education, no, Department of Transport. But they found themselves under pressure, people, raising this, and the Department of Education. Maybe if Treasury, when funds are available, they try to prioritize also that, so that our kids at school, they have got good learning, They go to school, they arrive on time and so on. We are still pushing for good results for KwaZulu-Natal, because they have prided ourselves with the good results from previous years to last year. And this year we are expecting as such that they must really perform very well regarding that. Coming to the estimated expenditure by OTP of 75 million, I think the report is indicating to us to say their performance, they have not met 50%, which is expected in the second quarter, to achieve. They have like less than 45%, But now they are saying they are going to overspend. It's something that one doesn't understand well. How will they reach to over expenditure of 75 million? Maybe Chair, it leads me to a question to say, last year in June, there was this youth fund that was distributed in the University of Zululand for young people that we support as members of the legislature, that if our young people can be involved in the formal business, it will be good. But can we check where was that budget coming from? Did we have the funds for that budget? Because now we are hearing about over expenditure. Can we understand whether that budget that was spent maybe before this report that is saying they will be under expenditure was budgeted for? If we can get that report. At the moment, Chair, let me hold at that whilst I'm looking, my notes that I was writing while they were giving presentation. Also, Chair, I must not leave the Department of Health. Also, it's like the Department of Education. You know, they have got a lot of staff, you know, maybe 80 or 90%, you know, the budget is for the staff. Like education, we hear that 899 is due to compensation of employees, as they have explained that they budgeted less than what was agreed upon, and it opened up these over expenditures that are coming now in this report. But also the Department of Department of Health, we heard that there is something that will be coming like Department of Education. It is our plea also that maybe if the resources are being found, they must be really pulled up, given more, so that they, you know, Department of Health is about our health, the health of the nation. If they will have, you know, the challenges, because when they don't have tablets in the clinics, we go to the media and say they are failing, but they don't have enough budget that are supposed to service our communities or our nation. So it is our plea as the Finance Portfolio Committee that a Department, Treasury, if resources comes, please, if this department can be prioritized, because they are life and death of our province. Thank you, Chair.
Well, thank you so much, Honorable Togotel, for standing on my behalf when I stepped out. Yes, he did. Yeah, no, thank you so much. Can we attend to these a few questions from Honorable CQ? One more.
I think the chair of SCOPA will recall that when we met with the Department of Education, they had a request that they put forward, the issue of unauthorized expenditure as a result of what we all understand, cuts, budget cuts, which equal to 26 billion in 3 years, as well as unfunded mandate of paying the employees. And they were putting forward the issue of requesting to write off unauthorized expenditure. I think it's 63.4 million. Because if they were cut for 26 billion, it's supposed to be more than 26 billion that is unauthorized expenditure, but they are trying to be disciplined. My question is that can Treasury assist in that regard to ease the pressure that the department is having? Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. And on behalf of my team, let me wish you a very happy birthday. I don't know if I'd want to spend my day in this office, but thank you for the questions. I think I touched on the pay on time, but in terms of people with disabilities, we actually have engaged with all the associations. In fact, we pass our adverts through those associations to try and get more candidates coming through, but we're not seeing that happening. Unfortunately, we cannot headhunt until you've exhausted the normal recruitment processes. So unfortunately, when you do a normal recruitment process, you may not necessarily get a candidate with that. But however, what we did do is, with our new intake in the 1st of April of interns, we successfully appointed 10 young people with disabilities, and we're hoping that we create that foundation, we can absorb them into the institution. So, and our ratios have improved in that regard. So we're quite happy about that. On the vacancy rate, we were 12.6% at the end of the financial year. We're at 8, and we're now at 7.25. So the number is actually coming down, and we can produce a detailed report to the committee on the progress on that. With regards to education, I think the challenge here, obviously, we are seeing a decline in the projected overspend by the department, which is positive, and we're hoping that the efforts that they are making around the recovery plan, we will start seeing the benefit, particularly around the headcount that we believe has been concluded, as well as the Persal database cleanup that we are working with the department on, and we're hoping to see that that will bring the numbers down. In terms of irregular expenditure, when they refer to it being under assessment, it means that there was a dispute with the Auditor General and they were unable to quantify the full amount. And in most instances, it's because of poor document management. We actually do have resources in the Department of Education at the moment, assisting them particularly around accruals, so we can get our head around what the department actually owes. So we will also engage them then on this issue around the irregular expenditure as well. But it has nothing to do with a budget, because your irregular expenditure has already been incurred, so they don't need money to clear it. I think maybe they're referring to resources to be able to investigate and clear that. So we will certainly look to see how we can assist them on that. With Transport, Scholar Transport, as the honourable members indicated, they are implementing on behalf of education. We have raised the policy issue, which I think the honourable member had raised earlier, and I'm sorry I didn't respond, I forgot to respond to. We have indicated that they should reverse the policy decision, that we are one of the only provinces where we have children that are living 3 kilometres from school that are getting transported, whereas all other provinces 5 kilometres. That obviously has a cost implication for the province, but we also understand 5 kilometres does seem like a long distance for little ones to travel, but if there are cost implications, and we already know that there are many children that in fact aren't being transported, that would in fact qualify. So we also know that the Department of Education has reviewed the schools and they've reduced the numbers in terms of their own cleanup in terms of data. So it is something that needs to be looked at. We have in the meantime asked the department to reprioritise within their budget, Department of Transport, to ensure that this is in fact funded in the current financial year. But during the adjustments, it is a consideration. Again, to clarify, Office of the Premier, as much as they are showing a low spend, 45%, we are aware in a recent application, I think 2 days ago, from the department for the Royal Household in terms of the additional beneficiaries of His Majesty the King, as well as the legal fees. So that is an application they've written to us. They've been able to absorb some of those costs out of this potential savings, but there is still a shortfall that they have asked for an additional allocation for. The Youth Fund, in 23-24, there was an allocation of 100 million rand, and that amount was dispersed. They utilised the Growth Fund as a vehicle. Then there was an additional 100 million made in 24-25. That amount was not spent, and this is the amount that the department has requested a rollover for. We are aware that there were some issues and there was an investigation, and we've been told that that investigation has been concluded, and the acting DG indicated that they're now in a position to start dispersing those funds, and therefore they need the rollover of the allocation. There is no allocation, if I'm correct, in the current 25-26 year for Youth Fund, and that's why they've asked for that rollover. Department of Health, we are concerned because every month we receive the IYM. We're seeing the number increasing, so it is a concern of ours. There is also positive news that there is additional funding coming to health, but certainly not to the extent of the 5 billion rand overspend. There currently is a dispute with the National Minister of Health on this additional funding, where he's telling us where the money should go. And we are saying we need to close the gap that we have. We can't be appointing new people because that's got to carry through cost. Also, the letters we've got are only dealing with one financial year, so you can't make decisions that have got to carry through cost. So currently there's a bit of a dispute with the National Minister, and hopefully we'll be able to resolve that. With education's unauthorised expenditure, if the province was to consider condoning that, it would mean the province would go in an overdraft. Because this is money that they spent that they didn't have. And if we then pass it on, it means the province then goes into an overdraft. So I don't think it's a consideration for the province. However, what we did note with the resolutions that the House took on the unauthorised expenditure to pay it off over 7 years, we noted that it was to be implemented by 25-26, and we've written to the Legislature asking, please, can it rather be the 26-27 year, because it's come so late in the year, we can't expect the department to have a significant budget cut, which would be an estimated 164 million over the next 7 years. So that is the challenge that we do have. I'm going to invite my team if there are any add-ons that they'd like to make.
Okay. No, thanks, Chairperson and members. The HOD has covered me, but I just need to give a member a detail on our strategies to actually fast track the filling of positions and where we are in terms of numbers. In 2023-24, we had 29.4% vacancy rate because we had a total of 88 posts that were created for internal audit. Then at the end of this financial year, we were down by 8.6% because we were at 20%. But currently we are at 12.6%. For that 12.6%, we're also including positions that we do not have funding for, which is a total of 28 positions. So in an actual fact, if we count the posts that we can fill, it's a total of 38, which gives us a vacancy rate of 8.7%. That vacancy rate is even lower than the normal or the national permissible rate of vacancy, which is 10%. So we have indeed made progress. And on the 38 posts that I am talking about, we have got about a total of 10 that is almost being finalized, with 5 offers being made and 5 in its really final stages. So we are really seeing progress. And I guess in Q3, we will be indicating a drastic reduction in numbers of vacant positions that we have in the department. Thanks, Judy.
Thanks. On the question that Honorable Madlopa raised on the UKZN and OTP, we don't have the information here, but I can undertake that we'll take the question back to ETIA and request that they provide the information on that. Was it UKZN or Unizol? Unizol. Yes, we will then revert back to the Honourable Member. We don't have the information here.
Honourable Seku, you can make a follow-up.
No, thank you, Honourable Chair. No, we will await for that because we were having an event in the Unizulu, where a lot of young people were all clapping hands for them. But now if they say there is no budget, because our understanding was that the youth fund will come up after the review, of the budget now as we are dealing with it. That time, our understanding was that there was no budget that was there until we review the budget and then maybe approved by the legislature to say now this is the youth fund and so on. So we'll be happy if we can get it in writing. Thank you.
Much, Honourable Sam.
Thank you so much, Honourable Chair. Greetings to yourself and honourable members in the House and the department across us. I must commend the department with the presentation. However, one must do allude that what is contained on the presentation is quite not impressing. Honourable Chair, my questions are basically based on cross-cutting and the accountability part of the presentation, the meat presentation for departments. The National Treasury adjustment will only ease some pressures in education and health, it is said. Now, which department will not benefit from that and how will they cope? That's the first question. Honourable Chair, allow me to just shorten my questions and they'll be specific. I won't do the whole EC part of things like how OCQ usually does it. No, not text. Second question would be, is there a provincial reprioritization framework to shift AMA funds from underspending departments like education, social development, to overspending ones like public works, transport now? That's my second question, Honourable Chair. Third one will be, what early warning system are in place to flag AMA budget pressures before mid-year, like AMA IYM reviews? Have any departments submitted AMA formal environments to address AMA pressures, and what was the outcome? And then on the accountability side of things, My question will be by when must the department submit AMA revised spending plans to avoid AMA unauthorized expenditure? And will the MEC or the MEC committee be provided with AMA monthly progress report on these high-risk areas? And what consequences will apply if AMA department exceeds their budgets without approval, like Section 34 of the PFMA implications? And then the last three will be based on the scholar transport, Honorable Chair. I have quite a few questions based on that. First one being, there are claims from operators that have increased due to escalation adjustments. Now, my question will be, were these built into the 2025-2026 budget? If not, why? What portion of the overspent is due to the 2024-2025 accrued liability? Was this disclosed in the 2024-2025 disclosure report? If not, why? Are there plans to revise ILENA policy? I know you've covered that, but I'm looking at the side of irradius limits and shared services to reduce AMA cost when it comes to ILENA transport. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. That would be my 2-cent submission.
Thank you so much, Shoti and the team.
Thank you very much, the Honourable Member, for the questions. My team will certainly assist with some of the answers. With regards to the departments that are showing spending pressures, as and when those are identified during the IYM, which is done by the 15th of every month, we would give the department, we would write to the accounting officer and ask them to please explain how they're going to remedy the situation. They expected then to report back by a specific time frame, and we obviously then interrogate that to see whether it's realistic, whether they can actually correct the information. They then also do environments, which is part of the reprioritization, and that exercise has already been concluded as it's part of the adjustment estimate. So that will come to this committee. We'll take the committee through each department and all the environments that they are wanting to undertake to ensure that they do have a balanced budget at the end of the day. Then just in terms of scholar transport, I think, if I understand it correctly, the process, this committee will engage with each of the departments, and I think the questions that the Honourable Member is raising are critical, and I think the department needs to address those. We do know that the accruals, it was reflected in terms of what they were unable to pay last year and obviously carried those costs into the next financial year. I wouldn't be able to answer the issues around the escalation costs. And on the policy side, again, we have raised it as Treasury. We can't enforce it. They initially said it was a national decision, which is not true because you can see the discrepancies across other provinces. So it is something that we would appreciate the members also taking it up with the department. If I could then hand to the team.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Through you, currently the provisional allocations that were set aside by the National Minister of Finance are for health and education. So when we receive those funds, if they are indicated that they are for those two departments, those are the two departments that will benefit. However, when the Minister tables the MTPPS tomorrow, if there are any other funds that are allocated to the equitable share and they don't have any conditions attached to them, we will look at the provincial pressures. Departments do continuously submit to Provincial Treasury their requests for additional funding, and those are the proposals that Treasury then takes to MINCOMBAT and to PEC to make a final determination if there are any additional resources. On the provincial reprioritization plan, whether there are any plans to shift funds between departments, to date, the only shifting of funds that has happened is the one that was convened by the Provincial Treasury and the Office of the Premier after there was a resolution of the Executive Council, and departments were all requested to identify funds that they were not going to spend, and those funds were earmarked for the Department of Health, and that's the only shift that we have done to date. We're not sure whether the PEC will direct us otherwise, but for now, departments have contributed and some public entities to funding the pressures in the Department of Health. I think that in terms of the the scholar transport. I'm hoping that when the committee maybe engages with the Department of Transport, there will be further clarity provided, because there are two pressures that are affecting on the transport side. The honourable member raised the issue of the escalation of claims and whether these were not included in the budget. I think those are not scholar transport claims. Those are the normal public transport claims that arise out of the conditional grant, the Provincial Transport Operation Grant, the normal bus subsidies. That is where those claims are. P-TOG over the years has always been topped up from equitable share funding because it's not sufficient for the services that KZN renders. It's an ongoing conversation between Department of Transport at the province and the National Department of Transport. So those increases in claims are referring to the Provincial Transport Operations Grant, not the learner transport. The learner transport pressure is a separate pressure in the sense that education identifies learners that qualify for the service, and then transport then needs to provide the service. But the issue that we have discussed is the correction of the baseline. Some years ago, transport had indicated that in order to cater for all the learners, they need, I think, close to 2 billion. And at the moment, as a province, we don't have that kind of funding, but we continuously try to fund that particular provincial priority. Thanks, Honourable Chair.
Tanya?
Thanks, Chair. Just on that issue as well that my DDG has just raised, if you look on page 564 of this book, the department did do some reprioritisation in the main budget, especially for those increases in the indices. So you'll see it there, it's 150 million they reprioritised. They did see it coming. But obviously also it's linked to the petrol price, and as that changes, that reprioritisation might be efficient or it might not be, sufficient. And then just in terms of the changes to the budget's environments, whether those have been passed or not, at this stage some departments have, and some are still in the process of getting their ducks in a row to formalise them in adjustments. So environments, there are some that departments can pass on their own without asking for our approval. So accounting officers can approve them. And some require Treasury approval, some require Legislature approval. So obviously the environments that require Legislature approval will be highlighting with you in the adjustments. But I'll use health as an example. They've already done quite an extensive reprioritisation exercise in developing their savings plan. So if you look at the book that we've handed out today, which is this one here, on page 112 as an example, health has already done quite an extensive reprioritisation exercise. You'll see lesser so under education at the moment. Doesn't mean they haven't been thinking along those lines. They just haven't done the actual movements in the IYM yet. We do expect to see quite a lot of reprioritisation in the adjustments chapters though. So each department you'll see has a section called proposed changes to the main budget, and that's where members will see who has and who hasn't at this point mid-year done some movements already. Thank you.
Thank you so much, but can I make a follow-up with regards to that, in particular with regard to transport? In terms of the learner transport, that's the function of Department of Education. So if that function in the Department of Transport is unfunded, becomes an unfunded mandate to the Department of Transport for the education function, not for the transport function. And why as transport has to take responsibility and even what or over 300 million anticipated over expenditure purely on the basis of learner transport? Why not Department of Education take that responsibility for such anticipated over expenditure?
Chair, you're not incorrect. Obviously, because the budget resides under Vote 12 Transport, that's also where the shortfall will reside. What Treasury has tried to do over the years is that when funding becomes available, that we propose to the Executive Council to add funding to anything that's underfunded. So The obvious ones that we've been trying to right-size the baseline of is property rates and learner transport. So you'll see in the last Green Book, we did add funding to both those, but it still isn't at that level where it's meant to be. And also in the adjustments every year, we also try and add funding to them purely because it really shouldn't be their responsibility in its entirety. They're performing the function for education. But I suppose for as long as the money in the bag is not big enough to fund everything, we do depend on them where they've got underspending, mainly in their organogram. Filling their organogram has taken some time. We do depend on them to help the provincial fiscus out, so to speak. But in an ideal world, it shouldn't be their problem.
Yeah, but I just do not understand this. How is it done? Because over the years, transport had to fork out more money from their baseline to fund, because now it becomes their own over expenditure. It doesn't make sense. A provincial treasury must do something about this, because the function purely it's education. Of course, the function is being performed at a Department of Transport, but it's not their function. And therefore, why do they have to go into their baseline, look for savings or create savings? And if there are no savings, it's them who take responsibility, while the function is not theirs. Or should the function be moved to Department of Transport? I'm not happy. I have not received a satisfactory answer into that. And I expect that Provincial Treasury must really give me a satisfactory kind of an answer into such a question. Purely because transport has been asked to perform this function on behalf of another department. They therefore cannot be held responsible for shortfall funding. There's something amiss here. But Honorable Sam, I was making follow-up on the basis of your questions that you had asked. Sorry about that. You can proceed if there are any other further follow-ups. Nothing, you are covered. All right. Honorable Secretary, wanted to make a follow-up in this. Yeah. Yes. Yes. You can just open there so that even those on the platform, they can hear our discussions. Aiki Mouse Lapituzan.
Yes, it's a while on that. Actually, at the Department of Transport Committee, we had agreed that we are going to sit with Department of Education, all three departments, and discuss the issue around this this learner transport issue, because it seems like when you Department of Education, it's another problem, and when you with Department of Transport, it's another issue. So that we resolve that all departments must sit together and we see to it how can we best assist this Department of Learner Transport.
Yes, and Provincial Treasury must lead in that.
Yeah.
Yes, Honorable Secretary.
Yeah, Chair, even in my contribution to this meeting, my take was that Department of Transport is a service provider. So it's like the department hiring somebody to do the work. But the shortfall cannot be in the service provider. It will be in the department. That's what I was saying, Chair, in your absentia. I think you are correct to say that maybe the Treasury must look at this thing, because it's like Department of Public Works. They fight that, but the shortfall is in the department, not to the service provider. So if the task is for Department of Transport, it must be clear that this is for Department of Transport. Because if it is for Department of Education, yes, the shortfall must be in the Department of Education, not yes, Transport. That is the understanding. Maybe it's a layman's understanding, Chair.
Yeah. Honorable Khan.
Thank you, Chair. Morning to everyone. Mine will be based on the last presentation. I'll just have a few questions on that. May you please list all vacant board positions and how long they have been vacant? And what interim governance arrangements do you have in place? And while on that question, how many critical positions, e.g. like engineers, project managers, are vacant across entities? And what is the recruitment timeline? How many CEOs and CFOs are in acting positions? And for how long? What risk does this pose to financial controls and audit outcomes? Have any entities received qualified audits or irregular expenditure findings linked to leadership vacancies or major disruptions? Which specific maintenance and capital projects are delayed due to capacity challenges? And what is the value of unspent CAPEX? Last one will be, why are the entities outsourcing critical functions? Is this a stopgap or a long-term dependency? What are the cost implications versus filing cost? Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Very short and sweet. HOD.
Thank you very much for the questions. We would have to ask the entities to provide that list. We would not have that with us currently. Where the biggest challenges with filling of vacancies in public entities is that Cabinet took a decision that the salaries of public entities must be aligned to the DPSA structures, because we were seeing a legal manager in a department earning half of what they were getting paid in a public entity. And so there was that Cabinet resolution taken some time ago. ETIA was then charged to put together a team, which they've started doing in terms of evaluating those posts and ensuring that alignment. Until that process is concluded, as Treasury, we are unable to approve the filling of any vacant posts where we can clearly see that there's a significant salary discrepancy. We have also assisted the department, ETIA, for an interim solution while they do this, because it's going to take 2 to 3 years for them to do the job evaluation. Unfortunately, they have still not taken that interim solution to Cabinet so that they at least have a base that we can then approve the filling of vacant posts. So that's a real concern of ours as Treasury. I would say that they would not, the issue of the vacancy would not affect the audit outcomes per se, because you still have somebody who takes that responsibility. You still have people that have been appointed to act in those posts, and they should still be accountable, and they should have the necessary ability to perform. It would, however, definitely have an impact on the spending that the Honourable Member is mentioning. I'm sure my team will respond to the impact that that has had. If you look at the presentation that was done by public entities, right, the very last slide, we do indicate which posts are vacant and which posts are filled. We obviously would have to get that information that the Honourable Member has requested in terms of how long those positions have been. But obviously this issue of the unresolved matter around the salaries is one of them that has caused the delay. But I'll then hand over to my team. Thanks.
Thank you, HOD. Honourable Chair, Honourable Members, I do think my HOD has covered me for the information that we do have on the specifics in terms of rand and values and timelines. We would need to go back to the entities to give you that information. Thank you.
Much. Honourable Khanyi, any follow-up? We are fine. Thank you so much. Honourable Dotel.
Chair, I think it was the Honourable Processor first. Yeah.
My apologies, Honourable Processor.
Not at all. I actually wasn't sure, Honourable Biela, but thank you very much. I appreciate it. Chairperson, thank you very much. The issues I wanted to raise are, first of all, could the HOD tell us how much they spend on printing these? Because we receive them electronically. And last time I checked, we were trying to move towards a greener planet. And if we receive them electronically, we really don't need them printed. So I don't know if you can tell us how much it was, but I'm sure it's quite a lot of paper. But I have to just point that out. That I don't think it's absolutely necessary to receive them, maybe on request only. But anyway, that's not the major issue. I'm sure it's not millions of rands, but thank you for them anyway. I appreciate it. But we do receive them electronically. The issues I wanted to raise just on departments and entities. So it looks like, and this was touched on during our SCOPA engagements, many departments are between a rock and a hard place. They don't have enough money. They can't fill vacancies. That's one of the overwhelming, one of the prescient matters. And so they really need advice and help on how to consolidate, reprioritize. And something that you mentioned to us when we unfortunately had you after the SCOPA hearings was that you're always available to advise departments on ways in which they could do it. And I think the MEC said sometimes you just need a third or fourth or a fifth set of eyes to look at something to give you ideas. So the question is, how many departments and entities out of the total amount? I think it was 14. I'm not sure how many entities, just took my, I don't know how many auditees we have. But how many of those have approached you and said, look, we don't know how to do this. Can we please have your expertise to assist us? That would be very helpful for us, because when we talk to the departments, it'd actually be great through you, Chairperson, if we could actually get a list of the departments and entities and how many have actually formally approached with you and engaged. Because when we speak to them and they say, we don't know what to do, we throw it on the why haven't you engaged Treasury? Which would be very useful to know that. Okay, then I wanted to ask you about public works. I was going to ask about transport, but and the learner transport, but that's been adequately covered, I think. Public works and infrastructure, they've got a major problem with this overspending by 826 million, close to R1 billion, because of rates. Is there not some sort of worth in the suggestion that rates, which we know are going to happen, every municipality is going to charge rates? Is it not possible to ring-fence those funds when it comes from the equitable share? Because it's almost like this surprising thing that they just don't have money for. And surely it can be budgeted for and ring-fenced, so it's not used on something else. I'd just like your advice on that. When we go to entities, okay, no, my question about entities was the ones that are struggling with slow spending, vacancy rates because they say they don't have money. How many of them have approached you? Thank you, Chairperson. That's all I have at the moment.
Thank you, Honourable Brotherson. HOD.
Thank you to the Honourable Member. My team, if I was hearing them correctly, was saying that the printing of these was requested by the committee, but I'm still confirm. In terms of the number of departments and entities that have requested assistance, we would prepare a report for the Honourable Member and for the committee, because there are specific support programs that we do provide, and we've got a detailed report that we could share. On property rates, the reality is the department has not been given sufficient budget. Same as the scholar transport, same as health and education, COE. So they simply do not have the budget to pay for property rates. So there would not be anything to ring fence So they've actually been underfunded. Now, the question is that previous members had asked, including the issue around scholar transport. The question then says, where do we take that funds from? Because if you had to take the property rates, scholar transport, health and educations, you're looking at probably easily 5 to 6 billion rand that you would have to take from the remaining departments. And I think members know the size of the remaining departments. I don't even think it adds up to the 5 billion rand that would be required. So it is part of the financial recovery plan in terms of how we recoup this. It's not the ideal situation, but we are, wherever we can, finding additional funding, including, for example, additional revenue that we can see coming through. But it's going to take time for us to correct those baselines. Thanks.
Thank you, through you, Chairperson. Maybe just to add that the reports that we are circulating today, we also print them in-house, but we can certainly do the costing in terms of the paper, the printers, and the binding. All of it, though, is done in-house. But if the honourable member would like us to do that itemized costing, we can try to do that. If the honourable member in the committee then indicate to us that they would prefer soft copies, that would also assist, that can be made available to the honourable members. I think some of it comes with just the request that we must provide 20 copies, and we always do. And it's also a practice that we can change as the committee pleases. In terms of how many departments have approached us, I don't think we would have that information here, but my little understanding is that there are also various engagements, either as CFO Forum or as the PAG engages with the various departments on a number of issues. It started as an audit improvement plan some 3-4 years ago, but that also dates far back beyond that. Departments also do get quite a lot of support and assistance from financial reporting in terms of the financials. So there is a number of engagements that do take place as from the budget office. We engage with departments at the end of their financial years, mid-year, and it's continuous. So I'm not too sure how do we then improve that interaction and engagement with departments such that at no point do they feel like they don't know what to do and they are not in a position to request Treasury to assist them, but we are available to assist. Thanks.
Yes, Honourable Professor.
Yeah, just to follow up, so I'm a little bit confused now because when you appeared in front of SCOPA for a briefing, we asked how many departments have come for help, and the answer from the MEC, and I believe you nodded, was very few. So I think, Chairperson, that these departments say they don't know what to do. You're available to help them. Can we just get a definitive answer, maybe in writing, as to how many have actually got hold of you and said, listen, we don't know what to do. Can you please have a look at our books and see if we can reprioritize? I'm sure you remember the conversation. If that's not the case, your colleague seems to indicate that you deal with all of them all the time. So if that was a misstatement at SCOPA, that's fine, but if we could just have the clear position where it is. I just want to know which of the departments are just sticking their heads in the sand and doing the ostrich act, and which are actually saying, look, come, we need help. That's what we're trying to work out here. Thanks.
Yes.
I think just to clarify, so at SCOPA we were discussing very specific interventions where a department is facing challenges that we would go in and assist them. What the DDG Shezi is referring to is our generic support that we give departments. So, for example, when there's a new accounting standard that is presented by National, we will then have a CFO forum and we'll take all the departments through it. So it's not specific addressing the question that the Honourable Member had asked around specifically departments coming in assisting with, for example, Department of Sports, Arts and Culture recently wrote to us wanting us to approve the organizational structure. We would then sit with them and highlight some of the shortcomings that we see in their submission, and we assist them. But we will present a detailed report. I think we were more presenting on the generic ongoing support that we do give to all departments and entities. For example, when it comes to the financial statements, as she indicated, we will assist departments in reviewing those financial statements before they're submitted to the auditors. But it wasn't specific to what was being discussed at SCOPA. So we will prepare that report, Chair.
Brother, you're covered. Okay, thank you so much. Honorable Tawatel, noted, Honorable, that you are part of the... Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chair. Just a brief question. Can Treasury explicate on the criteria it uses when departments submit their budgets and APPs to ensure that the targets that they set are not artificially low? And I want to provide a bit of context for my question. And I've questioned this with, within my portfolio that I sit in. When departments set, whether it's projections in terms of revenue collection or, targets that are going to be met for the year, there's almost a trend to artificially set the targets very low. And then ultimately we celebrate that as an overachievement. Just to bring it all within the context of this meeting, I'll just make a couple of examples. The Department of Human Settlements collected about, I think, 200,000 from their sale of assets within, the framework of property, plant, and equipment. And their projections are around 200 and something thousand. And as an outcome of the proceedings from the transaction, I think they raised about 700,000. I mean, ordinarily you would do an evaluation of assets before you dispose them off, which would sort of give you a ballpark of what to expect. And when that is, deliberately understated, then you collect slightly more, then we celebrate it as an overachievement. And we've seen it even at a portfolio level where targets for specific objectives are just relatively low. And we see this coming through as something that we should applaud. Because then it's an achievement if you do more than what you said you would, despite the fact that it was deliberately, artificially low. And so I'd really want to understand the role that Treasury plays in terms of assessing these APPs and these budgets against these targets that are set by the department, so that we have a much clearer understanding of what to actually applaud versus what should be termed as mediocrity, for a lack of a better word. Thank you.
Thank you very much again for the question. Initially, I thought you were referring to the APP targets, and I was going to say that's obviously Office of the Premier, but I realized you were referring to what they propose in terms of budgets, the targets and budgets. So in terms of revenue, obviously we do, and again the team will add to this, we do review historic audited figures against what departments are projecting. They also write to us when they're wanting to increase their tariffs, and we look at that in terms of does that feed into what they are projecting. But there are also circumstances beyond the department's control that are quite difficult to evaluate and assess or put a target towards. So using the same example as human settlement, they, for example, recovered unspent funds from municipalities, which they wouldn't be able to, because of this change in cycle planning, they wouldn't know until the municipality has completed the project and it's been audited that they would have identified those savings. So there's always a timing difference for them to plan that. But those are obviously the exceptions, but perhaps the team can just unpack a little bit more.
Thanks. In particular, sale of capital assets, we have a revenue unit at Provincial Treasury that looks at all categories of revenue. So I'm just using your example to just try and put some explanation to it. So what we have found with departments, when they budget for capital assets and sale thereof, it's not every year that you sell the same number of assets. So that's the first thing that will impact on how you budget for it. Some, for example, have a policy that they only have an auction every 2 years, every 3 years. And so the reports we prepare, for example, the mid-year report that we're presenting to you today, we will look at that category and see if they've fallen short of the target they've set themselves or if they've exceeded it. Specifically for that category, it often really relates to what they could get at auction. So these vehicles aren't sold, you know, like you and I would sell our car. We would maybe put it on, you know, take it, what's that place called? We Buy Cars, for example, who would give you a very known specific price. They take it to auction, and it depends on the appetite at the auction. So it isn't always an easy target for them to set. It depends on the mileage of the vehicle, and I think a lot of the vehicles we sell are quite old already. Just because of budget cuts, you extend the use of them. So if we do exceed it, good day at the auction. If we don't exceed it, it could be a bad day at the auction, but it's definitely something we look at, but it's not an exact science. So for that kind of overachievement, it really depends on what happened at auction of those assets. But we do look at it. When they set their targets, we say, like, obviously, if you've sold assets in the last cycle, the chances are you'll get more money the next time you have a sale, just because everything goes up rather than down in price. But it's not an exact science, I think, to be able to say whether that should be celebrated or if it's just a day that the price was good at auction. And it's often, you'll see it is our reason often that the auction gave them less or more than what they had anticipated.
Yeah, no, thank you, Chair. Thank you for the responses. I think I used the auction as just but one example. I think the principle in the question that I'm raising, or concern rather, is it's observations that I've made from the different portfolios that I attend. So if you look at the service delivery crisis in the province, and you look at what needs to be done by departments, there almost needs to be not just a sense of urgency, but an increased sense of rigor, of what must be achieved. Chair, in the portfolio for human settlements, I argued that the number of title deeds that were projected for the year were just ridiculously low if you look at them against the backlog. So if the backlog says that you have not issued, if the backlog says that you have 10,000 title deeds not issued, and your projection for the year is 100, it tells you that you will need at least another 50 years to deal with the issue. And that's at the heart of what I'm asking. The realistic projections of the targets that are set by departments against service delivery backlogs and what should be done, and the role of Treasury in the entire scheme of things.
We apologize, Ashoti, for this and the team for this difficult question. We have to ask them so that we prepare for the department when they come through. We are able to engage with them appropriately.
It is indeed a tough question because we're talking about service delivery targets now as well. And so the office, when as departments, we submit our annual performance plans, it does get us analysed by the Office of Premier, the Presidency, DPME, and we lately have also been asked as Treasury to comment. And so there's, in the analysis that departments get back when they reconsider their targets, we do look at it. We even had our own engagement as EXCO looking at how you align the spend against the achievement of targets. And it's not a clear-cut science, and it's something that we are trying to work on. But I think, Chair, it's something we have to consider as Treasury. We do an analysis, but it's not an exact science, and I think it's something that we may need to look at. But I think it's an important issue that the member has raised. Thanks.
Honourable de Klerk.
Thank you, Chair. Mine, I think, is similar to Honourable Biela, but different. We know that the departments have a lot of challenges, which include less money, budget cuts, accruals, and everything else. If the budget is done, it seems to me it's done, especially with those departments that year in and year out overexpend. That budget is never realistic. So when the budget is brought before us, we know that that department, let's use the two main examples of health and education, they will overexpend. It seems to me that the reason why this happens is the department's budget is based on a historical budget. So they do not go and rationalize their budget. They do not see, but oh my word, I will with all probability overexpend to 4 billion or 4.5 billion rand. So they keep the budget the same, knowing that there will be overexpenditure. Won't it be better if it is a zero budget system, where they cannot go on a historical budget and thus just carry on as usual? Because the reason why I'm asking it almost looks fatal. If we take these two departments and some of the others, we know in the beginning of the budget cycle, when we approve the budget, we actually know that they will overexpend. But that cannot be right, because then the PFMA doesn't apply anymore, because the accounting officer, how can he be taken to task if we accept the budget as it is and we accept that there will be overexpenditure? So the question then does boil down to, is there a way like zero budgeting or anything else where departments will be forced to cut their budget, to actually change it dramatically so that they do not overspend? Or are we in this runaway tractor ganda? We will not stop it, it will keep on going on. So that is what worries me, is how do we deal with a budget that clearly is not sufficient and will lead to big problems of overexpenditure? Thank you.
Thank you. Another very tough question. And I think that the Honourable Member is absolutely correct in that the budget is not realistic. We know that it's going to lead to overexpenditure. But the reality is, if we take health and education, to have a balanced budget, it means we have to retrench existing employees. They've got people in the system that are unfunded. So that's your first thing that you need to do. Second thing is, you need to, your goods and services in some aspects, like your learner transport. If you don't change the policy, and if you don't restrict the number of beneficiaries, it's unaffordable. So you've got unfunded policy decisions that result in the overspending. And until those hard decisions are taken, which have got a detrimental effect, even if you take something like medical supplies at health, if you say we're only going to buy what we have in the budget, it means someone's not going to get medicine at the end of the day. So that's the reality of need versus funds. How we correct that, as I said earlier, is what the team we've started that process now of looking across and saying, what do departments actually need? What is the real budget that they actually need? And what are the policy priorities of this government, so that we can take those difficult decisions? If, for example, we say no new infrastructure to be built over the next 2 years, no vacancies to be filled over the next 2 years, so that we can identify savings and plug those holes, those are the policy decisions that are going to have to be taken. Otherwise, the Honourable Member is correct. We will continuously find ourselves in this situation. Thanks.
Can I make a follow-up with regard to health in particular? You allowed health, or why did you allow health to fill those COVID? I think there were 5,000. Why did you allow health to absorb internally those 5,000 posts? Because now I was going to ask, to say, when you say that they are not funded, but you allow them to, 2 years ago or something, you allow them to absorb terms that were COVID related. Why did you do that? I mean, what were the reasons and how much impact does that have? My apologies, Honorable Clerk. I'll give you to make a follow-up.
Honourable Chair, Provincial Treasury did not give any approval. At the time that decision was taken, both Department of Education and Health were exempted from coming to Treasury for approval of vacant posts. So they went ahead and they made that decision. It was before my time, so I'm sure the team will add to this, but Treasury at no stage gave any approval, and it costs an estimated 2 billion rand unfunded.
Clerk?
Chair, I will give my follow-up to my colleague to my left because she didn't put up her hand. So she will take that time slot.
Yeah, Honourable Nai.
Thank you so much, Honourable Chairperson, and thank you, Honourable Lawrence, for your generosity. To the department, well done on the achievement and the overachievements. I was looking through the budget performance report. To start off to say that most of my questions have been covered, but looking through this budget performance report for the departments, there's something that struck me, and I need perhaps some clarity or some understanding to help me understand how this works. So I see here there's a lot of underspending, but this underspending is mitigated by overspending in the report. And I'm looking specifically at the Cocter report. However, with the overspending, this overspending is not on projected items. For instance, for Cocter, there is the award for best performing municipality. Then there is bursaries, money spent on food supplies, funerals, and so on. So my concern or my question is, how does Treasury actually control this or perform oversight of this? Because essentially, if this continues across all departments, then what we're saying is that departments can essentially just do as they please when it comes to spending and neglect the core functions of what they have budgeted for. That's my simplistic understanding. Perhaps you can shed some light on that. Thanks.
Cocter is a good example of possibly some of the frustrations we have as Treasury. Honourable members will know of the MEC's announcements with regards to medical aid and pension. This was never discussed with Provincial Treasury. In fact, it was never taken to the Executive Council either. And that was discussed last week, Wednesday, and Cabinet have sent them back. We wrote to the department when we became aware of this announcement to ask where the funding was coming from because we had not been consulted on this. We have received some responses, but we're still working through what they have provided. As much as they're showing underspend in this report, I think it was the October ROM where they in fact showed that they were projecting to overspend quite significantly. And obviously we then raised our concerns as Treasury saying, when we've discussed this issue with you before, you've said that you're able to reprioritize within your budget and that there won't be any spending pressures. And yet now you're projecting overspend. They've now subsequently come back to us again, reprioritized again. So we are concerned about Cocter. Their audit opinion was also declined to an unqualified with findings, and it was around payment of service providers. And as soon as you start seeing that challenge of payment of service providers, you know that there are spending pressures and there are issues within the budget, within the department. So we are concerned about Cocter and we are engaging them, and we're very pleased that the Executive Council took the position that they did. But it is a concern, and as Treasury, we can only raise the concerns, we can only raise the issues. We can withhold funds if we see that there is misspending. We can put a Section 18 as we did with education. But ultimately the counting officer must be held accountable for what they're doing. And I do hope this committee also engages when you engage with the departments. Thanks.
Honorable, no follow-up?
No, thank you, Chair. I'm satisfied with that. Thanks.
Okay. No, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I see Honorable Pasiela, who's got a question, is on the platform. Oh, Honorable Pasiela, I'm not sure if you are covered.
Honorable
Yes.
Chair,
Yes.
Honorable Chair, members of Treasury and the other members from Finance, I'm covered in with most of the contributions, following from Dirk, Seme, Kanye, Biela, de Klerk. All I want to say, it's basically the same thing, but just a comment to make is that we're sitting on a ticking time bomb. And I say that especially regards the incident that happened here in Pietermaritzburg at the Royal Showground yesterday. It's almost like a scene from Hunger Games, where you see 34,000 people clamoring and desperate for one of those 200 jobs. So while we look at budgets and while we look at these reports, we have to understand that whatever we're doing, it is, budget has to be linked to things that we can measure as far as outcomes. And when you look at things like poverty, unemployment, homelessness, service delivery, we're not getting there. In many departments, things have gotten worse. In other places, there hasn't been much improvement. Department of Health used to have wheelchairs available to those with mobility problems. It's now impossible to get a wheelchair. The number of ambulances serving people in the rural areas and in not rural areas causes grave concerns and increases the medical legal bill. The number of neonatal clinics that are not working, but let me not go into those specifics. Let me go straight to where can we and how do we do things in the new period. When we come to 26-27, there are funds to be reprioritized, but they are also not enough money. So you look at funds that are reprioritized, and we have to start looking at the intricate mechanisms of the sums, of the maths. How much is given to one line item? How is that performed? Is it outsourced? Is it in-house? Is there a scope of works? Is there a quantity surveyor that conducts it? And how will that improve something or the other? Like, will the pit latrines be reduced, or will they be eliminated? Will classrooms be repaired? Are we going to get wheelchairs? Will there be X-rays in the in hospitals? Transport, lots of other items. Now we're talking about departments and entities. So, is there a way that we could have a kind of a dashboard of looking at all the work that is tendered out, outsourced, and which are procured, and how things are quantified? Because there is an ambulance wash bay in the Ndwedwe area that cost the taxpayer 8 million rand, but on a quantity surveyor basis, when you look at per square meter, building cost of square meter, it shouldn't come to more than 700,000. Now that isn't even recorded as something that's fraudulent. There's no investigation. It is not. It's not covered. It's not even. Doesn't appear under the wasteful, fruitless, and irregular expenditure because it was budgeted for. With all the items and all the information that's coming out now in the portfolio committee and Madlanga, we can see there's an absolute need to look at existing money. So going forward into the new period, is there a way that we can have a look at how money is used so that we can look at how do we save? And then previously, at the previous Treasury meeting, I said we've got to start looking at creative things like all of us in our homes. When we need to cut things, we know how to cut things, and we need to come up with creative solutions. Workshops to repair vehicles. How will those things? The ambulances sitting down that are not used because they're broken, and they can be repaired. It's not impossible to repair. It's even possible to replace an engine. In the previous portfolio, I said people in Cuba drive 1950 cars. So there's no reason why we can't start spending more time on repairing rather than sell in auctions where we don't get much, where it probably just recovers the administrative costs for the auction. So, and then beside the workshops could be providing jobs, because on the one hand, you're looking at how does service delivery improve, but at the same time, we've got to repair, we've got to workshops, etc., has to be specific to specific areas so that you can target and do it where, for example, high unemployment rate, and you've got poor service delivery and poor medical health situation, classrooms, learner transport, many things. So is there a way of drawing up a dashboard? Is there a way of looking how reprioritization goes towards creating a project, and a project then engages in activity that can then target two things, and that would be improving the service delivery, saving money with using what we've got, and creating jobs. School furniture, for example, we see that they're too quick. Decisions are taken too quickly to just throw them on the side of the school instead of repairing them. Whereas there's some SGBs that are so creative and people are so hardworking and they're ready to come and improve the situation, the classrooms where their children learn in, and they start repairing things and renovating. So classrooms and things improve. So if the person on the street, if members of the public can do that, then why can't we start looking at how do we assist initiatives like that by taking the budget, yes, and preparing that dashboard?
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
Any specific question, except for dashboard issue?
The other one relates to online gambling, but perhaps this is not. How do we get more? How maybe nationally they have to work at how to tax online gambling more.
Okay.
Or eliminate it.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Eshoti.
Thank you very much. I think a lot of it is comments and thoughts, but really what the honourable member is referring to is value for money. For every rand we send, are we getting value for money, and are we paying market-related rates? So we've had quite extensive training, what we refer to as strategic sourcing, which is part of the demand management, first step of any supply chain management transaction. But I think in the main, it's a culture shift and it's a mind shift to say that as much as there might be a budget of 10 million rand, we need to understand that that's the public's funds and we need to get the best value out of that. And I think that's the shift that we really are trying to push as Treasury. Just on online gambling, I know recently DDG Shezi had an engagement. We know that there's some movement on this. It's a national policy that needs to go through, but it will have substantial revenue for the province. And I know the gambling board, I know their name has changed, ERA, but they are also working on it quite aggressively. It is one of the areas we're looking at from a new revenue source. Thanks.
All right. No, thank you so much. I think we, by and large, we have covered a lot of ground with regard to the question, and I think we've prepared ourselves for the forthcoming hearings with various entities and departments. I think we are ready. Thank you so much, Treasury and the team, for that. Can we then just go straight, because members are going out to pick up some tea? I'll encourage you, Ashoti and your team also, if there's anyone who feels, can just go grab and come back. Can we then take the last presentation, which is the draft budget and the draft APP? Of course, this remains a draft, our first draft. I know we're still going to go out also even into the community to be presented once more, where we're going to be interacting somewhere, I think now or in January, somewhere there. So I'll give you that chance. I'm not sure, HOT, who did on your behalf, you'll guide us. Over to you.
Thank you very much. And again, we must apologize for not having sent through the APP. I think the confusion came in that the original invitation we got didn't have it listed there, and then it came on Friday in the attachment. So we do apologize, but we have subsequently sent it through. In the main, the APP, we have not changed any of the indicators. We only in the first 6 months, first of the 5 years. What we have done, though, is to ensure that the activities of the financial recovery plan find themselves within the APP. So you'll see, if you look at the indicators and the targets, there haven't been any significant shifts or changes there. And then in terms of the budget, again, we have applied the principles that have come through from the Budget Office in terms of the guidelines that we've been provided. And you would have seen in our presentation that there are a number of spending pressures, so we are going to have to remedy the baselines in the department, which means budget cuts in some of the programs. We still need to see how best we do that, but we will also be asking for additional funding from the contingency reserve to fund the financial recovery plan, as well as the internal audit services that have been re-centralized under Treasury, because obviously those services are not provided for, but they are for the province holistically. Chair, I'm not sure how much detail you want us to go through in terms of that. As we indicated, in terms of our strategy as department, we really are around ensuring that we contribute towards the clean, good governance in the province in terms of the audit outcomes that we see departments coming through. But we also then look at how departments are spending, ensure that we don't have overspending, how we assist with municipalities, ensuring they've got funded budgets as well, enhancing the revenue that we collect, and then, of course, supporting departments, ensuring that they procure from the targeted groups in the province. And those are the high-level outcome indicators that we have, which the APP then feeds into. But as you would see, the same indicators that were reported on in Q2 are the same indicators that are finding themselves in the APP. Chair, I'll just be guided as to how much detail you want us to go into.
I'm not sure, honourable members, if you would want the HOT and the team to go into detail beyond the framework that they've just given us. I think this should suffice for now, as we will then proceed. But of course, I want to, we lead in a collective. So this is, I'm getting an indication from members that this should be fine. This is fine. Thank you so much, HOT, with your team for the tool that you've just as a framework presenting. Thank you so much. It's good that you are saying in the APP there is nothing much that has changed, in terms of the key indicators that are actually there. Thank you so much for that. I'm getting an indication that we are almost through our agenda with the Treasury, except for us as members who need to remain and adopt those minutes that we have. That's the only thing that we have. If that's what I'm getting at, thank you so much, HOT, with your team. You are kindly invited to join us, or just go before us into lunch. We do not want to have a fruitless and wasteful expenditure. So please help us to fulfill that, mandate of really not having that wasteful and fruitless expenditure. Thank you so much to you, HOT, and the team. You are released. Honourable members, can then go straight to our our minutes. Yeah, there are just two sets for August, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. 11 and 12 of August, yes. Let's start with the one for 11 of August, so that we right. They are pinned there. Can we start with the 11th of August? Honorable members, are there any issues or any corrections? We were dealing with the first quarter briefing. I think was mainly on the, or as well as the briefing on the FIS. Those were the two issues mainly. Can we adopt those, that it's a simple minutes because we're dealing with that? Honorable President?
I move the adoption, Chair.
They have been moved. Honorable Secu? They have been supported. Thank you so much. Can we go to the 12th? We were on Teams again, as well as we were dealing with the first quarter performance, as well as unaudited closeout report, honorable members, as you recall. Those were the only two issues that we're dealing with. There were just minor issues there. MEC made some remarks, and then we dealt, the presentation was forwarded to us. I've had a look at them at home. I did not see any issues. If you can, honorable members, if there are any issues, or can we move to, yes, Honorable Nai?
Chair, I'll move for the adoption of the minutes.
Yes, thank you so much, Honorable Nai. Any member who was present, it cannot be chair, of course. Honorable President, can you support?
Yes, I'll support. Thank you.
Thank you so much. They've been supported. Honorable members, thank you so much. We've come to the end of our interaction. Thank you so much. I think we'll only meet on Friday, to then start dealing with Office of the Premier. Yes. Thank you so much, honorable members. The meeting is duly adjourned. Thank you so much. Thank you.